Welcome to the Red Barrels podcast. We're up to episode 14. I don't know about anything about numerology, but I can't think of anything special about that number. We're just going to move on and go straight into introductions. I am, as always, your host, the one who introduces the podcast at least. It's Alex. And who's joining me?
As always, you've got
Go ahead.
you go
That was
first.
great.
Sofie.
That was such
Keep
a
it in.
pro move. Who can deny that we are now veteran podcast?
I'm Sofie. I'm also on the podcast. I'm also joined by...
By Ed. I am also always on the podcast. There's never been one without
Yes.
one of us. One day, hopefully, there will be.
Yet.
As we oust either Alex or Sofie. I've not decided yet.
Yeah.
Wow, the purges begin. The purges begin.
Get rid of them. Who needs them?
Finally,
Yeah. You know,
can't wait for a little purge.
I've been hoping for some factions to break out. You know, let's decide what our
It's not a
factions are going to
leftist
be. What's the
podcast
factions going to
without
be?
factions.
Who's the most right wing of the three of us?
You
know what? I'm nixing this. This is a bad direction to take it. Maybe we'll save this
So
for
early.
episode 24.
All of a sudden, I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, I do believe that,
I would love to be
the-
cancelled.
police force is a necessary force. I do kind of think that. I don't.
Shit,
I
man.
don't.
shit,
To be
man.
clear,
I've taken us to negative places. Let's get straight into the games. Let's just go straight. Let's leapfrog
pod.
the negativity into the games. And first up, it's going to be Sofie with an indie game ?
Right. So I'm going to be talking about Dave the Diver, which I will get the Wikipedia page up so that I don't mess up just telling you guys what it is about. Not an indie game. I learned because of the conversation we had pre-pod, which basically, I guess it's owned by like a massive studio, right?
It's like, I think it's like a reasonably sized studio, but it's like the studio is wholly owned by a massive conglomerate.
Yeah. Okay, right. So let me explain the game a little bit at first, which is a challenge because this game has a lot in it. I don't know if any of you guys have seen any gameplay, like trailers or anything. This game is chock full of stuff to do. As we will later discover, maybe a little bit too much stuff to do. So it came out in 2023 on Windows, which is what I've been playing it on. And it's basically, developed and published by Mint Rocket. Basically combines both action-adventure and management gameplay styles, where basically you play as Dave, he is a diver, and the core gameplay is you dive into the ocean. Specific, I think it's a fictional part of a fictional ocean called the Blue Hole, I think it's called, where it's like a really deep, basically body of water where it goes really, really, really deep down, I think. I haven't gotten super, super deep yet. I think I've gone to like 150, maybe 200 meters down, but we'll talk a little bit about that gameplay loop. But basically, so you're Dave the Diver, you play as a diver, he goes into the blue hole, he fishes out fish and sea urchin and seahorses, and basically you can eat almost anything down there. There's an assortment of like ingredients and also like cutlery you can find and crockery and stuff to decorate your restaurant with. Because basically you catch fish and then you send them to the restaurant that you work at nights. You work as a waiter nights at a sushi restaurant for your friend Bancho. It's called Bancho Sushi. Your friend Bancho is the chef. He's the sort of like quite renowned sushi chef that you work with. So yeah, diver by day, sushi waiter by night. And sometimes you'll have like special customers that will come in that have special... that like Bancho wants to impress with a particular sushi dish, so you have to catch some requisite ingredients. It's heavily inspired by anime. You can tell, I think it's a Korean studio, but it's heavily inspired by anime, specifically food anime. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen a food anime before, but it has a very particular vibe to it. I think there was a food anime. I don't remember the name of it because I don't watch anime because I'm not a weeb. But
Well, I'm so much not a
weeb.
weeb that I've got to ask,
Accurately.
what is a food anime?
Yeah, so food anime is basically an anime about food. It's what it sounds like. It's an anime with the key sort of tension being about food.
Like
So,
the
like-
bear, but an anime?
Like the bear, but in anime, usually they're a lot more lighthearted, though. I remember the only one I've ever seen it was called yakitate pan, I think, which means like freshly baked bread. And it was about like a baker. And basically every episode he would have like a new person to impress, a new stern, not easily impressed person to impress. But because the main character was like a prodigy baker, he would make something. And then the reaction shots to the food would be like really dramatic and like almost a little bit sexual, sometimes overtly
like
quite
porn.
a bit sexual. So the sort of impressing the food critics scenes in the game are also very similarly like really over the top. People are like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. Sometimes it's a little bit sexual, but I do think it's actually quite funny. Like the way they've rendered it is really quite charming and funny and silly.
Yeah, that's
heavily...
a famous kind of aspect of food anime that like the characters all have orgasms when they
like,
eat.
Food. Yeah, it's great. It's quite funny. Obviously, it's weird in typical sort of like anime style. It is weird, but I do think it's quite charming the way the game has done it. So yes, the thing about this game is that when it comes to describing the gameplay is that I think if I were to get into every single thing, we would be here for a while. There's a lot of gameplay. There's lots of different things that you do. Basically, if you think of any simulation game that you can do, it is in Dave the Diver. So obviously there's a restaurant manager, there's this diving simulator, but also there's a farming simulator, there's a fish egg farming simulator, there's like, you use weapons, there's bosses, it's kind of Elden Ring-ish as well. There's like big bosses that you have to beat, you have to use special techniques for, special weapons for. And there's like a Pokemon style collectible card game. There's like stock market, I believe, as well. There's just so much. And I think I got about like I feel like probably maybe a third or a quarter of the way into the game. And then I started to get quite overwhelmed with like how many different styles of gameplay I was having to manage. I just found it quite a lot in the end. But yeah, basically this gameplay loop is like twice per day you get to dive and you get stuff from the sea, you send it to the restaurant, you serve it at the restaurant, and you're slowly sort of like leveling up your equipment, your diving capabilities, you're, leveling up your suit so that you can go deeper. I think genuinely it is very fun. I really enjoyed it. I was really, really enticed by it in the early stages. I played a lot of it in the early stages because it's just really fun to like go deeper into the ocean and find more fish and beat the bosses. And it's really very approachable at the beginning. And they kind of introduce a lot of the gameplay mechanics very slowly. But it does also happen at what feels like constantly. So it kind of started growing exponentially. It felt like the number of things I had to do became just a little bit overwhelming for me. I might return to it at some point, but I think for me it was a little bit too much. And that's actually one of the reasons I've heard like other people don't pick up this game or don't play this game is that it gets a little bit overwhelming, the amount of gameplay that there is available. But I think some people obviously would love to like 100% this type of game. I just find it a bit overwhelming. Yeah, there's lots of like basically side quests from characters. Like there's a character that you meet who's really interested in research. So sometimes you have to collect particular items for her and then bring them up. There's a character who's really interested in, and this is where some of the politics might come in as well, is there's a character who's really interested in a mythical underwater people, like basically mermaid people, but they're kind of designed to be like sort of traditional or like Meiji era Japan or like traditional sort of like, China, basically with the traditional buildings and stuff. So definitely a bit of a strange allegory there of this sort of like indigenous people under the sea that you're sort of occasionally collecting artifacts for. So yeah, like I said, my overall review of the game is that I've really enjoyed it, but I did get a bit overwhelmed by it. I think the politics is where this game gets interesting, is that like obviously you are doing fishing. Fishing is obviously quite a politicized industry, especially industrials fishing. Obviously you're doing it at the scale of like an independent fisherman for an independent restaurant, which is quite heavily sort of repeated in the game, where like there's a point where you have an encounter with a man who's dressed in like camo gear, and he's upset because you've been fishing in the area, and he says, you're destroying the local environment, I'm gonna kill you. Which like, seems like really excessive. He's like, you've been destroying the local marine environment, I'm gonna kill you for that. And then he basically throws bombs at you, destroying the marine environment. Very clearly hypocritical, very intentionally. He's such a hypocrite, right? He's throwing bombs at you. saying that you're destroying the environment. And then you literally say like, but I'm just an independent fisherman. I am not a large-scale industrial fisherman who might take more than can be replenished naturally by the ocean. I am but a small independent fisherman. So like it felt very on the nose in terms of trying to get across it, why it's not problematic, why you shouldn't feel particularly bad about like murdering some fish, which like genuinely does feel a bit awful at the beginning for just like shooting sharks and stuff. It's like, well,
He was a bit of a dick anyway.
it is a bit of a dick anyway.
It sounds a bit reminiscent of Monster Hunter when they come up with all the
Exactly.
extensive reasons why it's okay that you're hunting these beautiful creatures.
Precisely. So there's quite a
Trust me,
quite a
this
lot
guy,
of like
he's got so many
there.
overdue library books. He's not paid his parking fines.
Yeah.
He deserves it,
The
basically.
shark's a real fucking character, let me tell you.
And you're such a good boy, so it's all good. It's not a problem,
You're
really.
such a good boy. You're just a little independent fisherman. So I thought the politics of that was very interesting. I didn't really get super far into that particular story arc, but I did find the politics of that very interesting, where it felt quite self-conscious, where it was just like, no, it's fine. Like, I actually would have been okay playing this game without you addressing the ethics of it. Like, I can understand it's a small fisherman for a small little restaurant. But it did feel quite self-conscious. And for me, it little bit sort of over-tipped its hand in terms of having the guy who was over-concerned, who was concerned, portrayed as over-concerned, and also then negligent by destroying the environment himself. I thought that had a bit of a weird tone to it. Didn't feel very tonally consistent.
Like everyone on the left, he went too far. He had some good points, but he just went too far.
Exactly. It did feel a little bit like, oh, I see where you're coming from, but like, let's not do violence. So I'm a little bit uncertain about how I felt about that. It gave me weird vibes. The other element where politics comes into play in like quite a big way is this indigenous Mer people.
I see.
Like, you're right, very, very Monster Hunter, in that there's an indigenous Mer people that you basically discover underwater. You find some artifacts. They've been like unheard of, unseen, basically sort of Atlantis, basically. Unheard of, unseen, until you happen to stumble upon an artifact because you're a bumbling idiot. And then you have like a contact who's very interested in your bumbling idiot theatrics. So you're just like, oopsie doopsie, I stumbled upon an ancient civilization. And he's like, what? Oh my God, we need to investigate this more. And yes, basically you do eventually find this underwater civilization. The way that you find them is that you end up stumbling across someone from that underwater civilization, literally a damsel in distress who needs rescuing. So it did feel, again, a little bit, I don't really know what we're trying to say.
Isn't this basically the plot of Pocahontas?
Basically. And it's like this damsel in distress who needs rescuing, and also her incompetent bodyguard, basically, is like the first people that you meet from this Mer people indigenous community. And again, I don't really love the vibe of like, oh, they've been living underneath the water in secret successfully for many, many years and thriving, but now all of a sudden they're incapable of like adapting to the environment and they need rescuing from just like some guy. I find that a little bit hard to believe. So that also has a little bit of a strange, Pocahontas-y vibe. So that is kind of the reason that I decided to talk about it today, is because I just love how confused the politics are for this video game. I love it. I love that they're trying to cover all of their bases whilst also covering none of them. I think eventually, like, you save this damsel in distress. She leads you back to her community as thanks. Very Pocahontas. She's like, I'm going to introduce you to my world. It's really beautiful, something, wind in your hair.
Yeah.
I don't know what that song is. And then I didn't really get very far with this quest as well because I didn't finish this game. I apologize. But basically you get to a point where you're tasked with like helping the people around the village, the underwater village, in order to gain their trust. Presumably for some purpose. Presumably you're gaining their trust for some kind of purpose, potentially for this researcher friend of yours who's really interested in this underwater community. You're also dealing with industrial fishery as well, or industrial fishing as well, in that occasionally you will come across like a dolphin that's trapped in a net and you'll have to cut it free. that
Sure.
happens like 2-3 times, and then it's very obvious where like the fuck.
This is the
It's like these
bad way of
armed-
killing fish.
This is the bad way of killing fish. And they literally, again, are so on the nose about it. The third time it happens, you save this dolphin from a net, and then these industrial fishermen come down with scuba gear and guns and then try and shoot you to death
Wow.
underwater for trying to steal their dolphin catch. But their dolphin catch was also caught. Basically, the industrial. This is again so on the nose. The industrial fisherman team. They had cast a net, and specifically for the sake of catching tuna, and then a dolphin had gotten caught in the tuna net, like extremely on the nose. And then you literally are just like, oh, I wouldn't have, I'm not trying to interfere, but when you cast such a large net, you're inevitably going to catch more than you intend to be catching. And they're like, shut up, die. So it's just very on the nose criticism of industrial fishing. Very like, this is not what we're doing though. Not like me, not like other girls style of campaigning about fishing.
I don't think that's a sentence anyone's ever said before.
You know? And Dave the Diver is the not like other girls of fishermen. It's what I'm
I'll
saying.
put that on the box when they release it.
Put that on the box. Make that the title of the episode. We don't have episode titles. Maybe we should start.
I will do. It's about time we had a manic pixie dream girl fisherman
Yeah, exactly.
game.
Thank God.
So yeah, I really enjoyed how batshit confused the politics of this video game were. I just think it was very funny because it did kind of portray itself as quite like an indie sort of under the radar title. It is kind of interesting how self-conscious it is about the politics that it presents and like the numerous kinds of politics that it presents in terms of like, eco-colonialism, industrial fishing, environmental protections, obviously ocean health, etc. I just thought it was so interesting how they decided to go into all of these different territories, like the game, trying to cover every single style of simulation gameplay it possibly can. It also seemed to try and cover as many political issues in the most centrist way possible that it could. Like, that seemed to have been their goal. And it's not exactly a criticism because I do think it's funny. Like, I did genuinely think it was so funny when I was playing it. I was like, oh, I have to talk about this in Red Barrels because it is hilariously on the nose with a lot of the politics it's trying to say. But at the same time, it's on the nose in the center. It says absolutely nothing.
I wonder if that's like, because it seems like this game is basically like, one of these big sprawling service games, even if it's a bit maybe odd for that because it's like got this indie game 2D aesthetic. But it means that they have to constantly add more and more stuff to the game, more systems and more stories and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're just like constantly having to just think of things and story elements to put in the game. And eventually you keep doing that. You can't avoid some kind of political statement.
Yeah.
And of course, it's made by a big corporation. So they're not going to say anything controversial.
Anything specific.
So
exactly.
it's just like an engine for generating rubbish political centrist text. You're like as the longer it goes on, they'll just do that more and more and more. And eventually they'll like even start having stuff outside of the world of fishing because they just need content to fill the game with,
Exactly. So I think I could maybe describe it as a little bit bloated, both like in terms of the content it tries to cover and the gameplay it tries to cover. I think bloated is a pretty good adjective for it. That being said, I really did enjoy it while I was playing it. It is very fun. It is very satisfying. My favorite segment was the restaurant manager. I'm sure lots of people would have different answers to that question of like, oh, they really like the diving segment. They really like the management segment. They really like upgrading the weapons. They like doing the big bosses, etc. Like the big bosses were also really fun. They do the big bosses in a really satisfying way where they introduce combat techniques really slowly and then just give you many opportunities to succeed in a boss battle. So it just feels really like high stakes but low stakes at the same time. So I was really just very impressed with the gameplay is fun. It's a fun game, maybe a little bit bloated on all fronts, but I did really enjoy it while I was playing it.
Is the diving stuff roguelike, or is it like one map that you sort of learn?
I think, to be honest, I actually don't know. I got a bit confused if the map changes every single time. I think it maybe changes every single time, but not but not entirely. It's like there's just the sort of surface level appearance of it changes. Well, actually, no, I don't think it does change every single time, because there are like deep areas that you have to get to which are consistently the same. So I think maybe it's just alternating between 2 different maps in the morning and afternoon session is what I suspect. I'm kind of the worst person to ask, because I kept meaning to look that up, because I was like, this doesn't look familiar, but I also just have ADD. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So
if you got the right mindset, any game's a roguelike.
Any game's a roguelike if you wanted to be.
Wow,
when
that's
you
very
start up and you're like,
inspirational.
I don't remember the equipment I have. But yeah, super fun.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds interesting. I mean, maybe it's worth talking about that indie game controversy a bit. Because I did
didn't know
allude to
about
at the
that.
beginning. Yeah, basically, this game got nominated whatever year it was, the Game Awards, as one of the indie game of the year. I don't think it won. And probably a large part of the reason it didn't win was because there was people saying, well, is this an indie game? It's like a 2D side-scrolling game with pixel graphics, but it's made by a company owned by a massive conglomeration. They've got lots of money behind it if they, as much as they want, really, potentially, if they wanted to put into it. What's your kind of thought on that? Does it feel like an indie game, even if it's not like actually an indie game? Are they kind of like going for that vibe specifically? If they are, does that feel like cynical? I just wonder.
It feels like they are going for the vibe. Maybe it is cynical, but to me it does feel like they are going for the vibe. However, it doesn't convincingly feel that way. Like I would just as easily believe this came out by a big studio as a small studio after playing it. I think when you first start it feels a lot more indie, but I do think, again, that's very intentional. Like, it's stylistically, it's pixel, it's a side scroller, it's 2D, so like it feels very indie. And the music feels very indie, the style and the sort of characterization of like the anime sort of style choice feels very indie and maybe created with some love. But like, because there's so much to the game, I think I thought, God, this is so big. There's so much. This can't be a small development team. Like, I think just by the sheer scale of the amount of stuff you can do in the game, I think that kind of gives it away. But it does seem to be going for the aesthetic of indie, which does feel a bit shit. It doesn't feel a little shit. You have your thinking face on it.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. I guess it would be like, what makes something an indie game? Like, how independent do you need to be? And then there's also like thinking about what the motivations would be for sort of positioning your game as an indie game when it's sort of maybe not. Like, I guess it lets you get away with like putting out a product which is probably slightly cheaper to make than like a big AAA game that you maybe is more achievable. I don't know. But also, so there's that, but then there's also the feeling of an indie game inspires, I feel like, a certain amount of goodwill.
Yeah.
Like, I feel more when you play a game and you're like, oh, like 1 or 2 people made this in their basement. You're like, wow, that's so impressive. I feel so positively about that. So it's sort of it's like stolen valor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you monsters! How dare you pretend to be an indie game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, which it does kind of feel that way. When you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That does feel a bit cheeky. It feels a bit cheeky. Yeah.
To be fair, I think when that award happened, I think, they hadn't added anywhere near as much to the game at that point. So it probably felt a bit more legitimately indie, even if like financially, economically, it still wasn't by any real stretch of imagination. But yeah, it's kind of, where is even the line? Do you have to be like one person to make indie? I don't think anyone would think that. But like, is 10 people indie? Is 20? Is 30? I'm going to be talking about Claire Obscure Expedition 33 in a bit, and that game was made by about 40 people, the core team. Is that indie? I mean, it's in Unreal 5 and got like big name actors doing the voices and stuff. Probably isn't indie, but it's like kind of indie adjacent, maybe. So even then, where the line is, I mean, it's unclear, but it probably isn't just having pixel graphics.
I would say, according to this article by PC Gamer that I've just found, the director of the game says that they don't consider it an indie game.
No.
So fair play. I guess we're in agreement.
I think that's really interesting what you said about goodwill, of like trying to maybe farm goodwill in terms of like kind of cosplaying as an indie game. I do think that's interesting, of like Yeah, I don't know. Or just kind of getting like cult classic accreditation for being an indie game. I don't know. That's interesting. Why would you want to cosplay as an indie game?
Yeah. I mean, from the perspective of the company, while this probably isn't, it's so expansive, as you were saying, it's not like a cheap game in general terms. I'm sure it's much cheaper to make than another game, like, I don't know, Genshin Impact, something, another big game that has lots of stuff in it. And, so it's probably a smaller team on that level, and it's probably cost effective to make it with pixel graphics and so on. So, I don't know. It's a weird thing, but it's an interesting.
Well, thank you for listening. My overall verdict is like, take a look at a trailer. If it looks interesting to you, it is fun. It is fun. For me, it was a little overwhelming. I feel like completionists would either love it or hate it. It feels like it's made a bit for completionists, and I'm not one, which is maybe why I feel it's a bit overwhelming. So I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff I just don't really want to fuck with. But I did really enjoy it.
Is it free to play? Or is it?
Nope.
Nope.
I think it's not as expensive as like a mainstream game. I think it's like 25 quid or so. I got it on sale, I think, for like $15. So it's also on the Switch, which seems like a nice way to play it as well.
Yeah.
Of just like that sort of managing sim. But yeah, that's my final verdict.
All right. Okay. Well, in that case, I think we're going to be moving on to, let's say, Ed's exploration of God of War and the God of War-like genre.
We're going to be going to a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. I've done it the wrong way around. But
wow,
yeah,
what an intro.
What an intro. I've been playing Star Wars Force Unleashed, which is a 2008 action-adventure game developed by LucasArts. I played the Switch version, which is a remaster developed by Aspyr Games and came out in 2022. I'm going to start by talking about the gameplay a bit and then go into the story, which is kind of the wrong way around. Like, that's not how I would normally do it, but I just feel like it made sense for me in this case.
Go with your gut.
So yeah, as Alex alluded to, I would describe this game as God of War with Star Wars characteristics. Before I get into it, I want to say that God of War came out in March 2005, and this game was greenlit internally in April 2005. So it really feels like a very direct inspiration.
I love it when they like something happens and just like the suits come down to things. So we're doing this now.
Shit.
We're doing this now.
We got to do it. Yeah. So in what ways is it similar to God of War? Well, like in nearly every way. So, I mean, the basic gameplay loop, you enter a room full of enemies, you kill all the enemies, you move on to the next room, rinse and repeat until you get either a cutscene or a boss, and that's the entire game. In fact, in terms of gameplay, it's even simpler than God of War. There isn't really any platforming to do, there aren't really any puzzles, and there are fewer enemy types. The enemies are quite easy, so there's not any real need to sort of engage with the combos you unlock. You can kind of button mash your way through the entire game. The bosses too, there are bosses like I said, but they are also very easy. Only a surface level grasp of the game's mechanics are required for you to get through the entire game. So yes, it's a Star Wars-y God of War, but it's also a simplified God of War. I guess it makes sense. The target demographic presumably is, I don't know, 6 years younger or something. Probably someone with the age between 8 and 14 would be the ideal audience for this game. I think I did say God of War, probably 14 is the peak age for that game, but I imagine it was an 18 on release. But
probably was.
That said, it does have some of the strengths of God of War as well. I just said that the combos were not necessary while playing the game. You unlock them as you go through, and they consist of like force abilities, like force lightning, force choking. Yeah, they're not necessary, but I did use them quite a lot because they do look cool. And they do make you feel like a Star Wars badass. I watched the behind-the-scenes documentary thing in preparation for this podcast. And in that, I learned that they had like a motto when they were making the game. That the whole point of the game is to let the player, quote, kick someone's ass with the Force. And they would like say that as a group at group meetings. Like they would recite this motto. And do you know what?
Adorable.
The game certainly lets you do that. In fact, like that's basically all the game lets you do. The game, it's very simple whether or not you would enjoy this game. It entirely boils down to, does a Star Wars-based power fantasy action game sound good to you? If no, avoid this game. The game does nothing to elevate that as a premise. But if yes, the game is probably solid enough to give you a few hours of fun. Like, it's not particularly complicated from a gameplay perspective. It's very simple. You'll have a good time with it. It's relatively competent, if that kind of thing sounds appealing to you at all. Right, so having said that, I've probably cut out anyone that's not interested in playing a Star Wars game, so I know that only the Star Wars fans are left now. Thank God, we only like Star Wars fans on this podcast, with the possible exception of Sofie, who we like despite her sins.
I love Star Wars fans.
So let me talk about the story a little bit. I'm going to talk about it in Star Wars terms, and I'm going to assume that you guys are all fucking nerds, because, I mean, I kind of am a bit.
Yeah.
What's the story? The story is set between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope. You play as the secret apprentice of Darth Vader, and you're starting off in the game helping him hunt down the Jedi that survived Order 66 and killing them. It's part of the Great Jedi Purge. Your character, thank you. Your character is meant to be kind of like an inversion of Luke Skywalker. You're someone who accepts Vader as your father figure, even when he's bad and evil. Your character's name, in fact, is Star Killer, which is fitting because Star Killer was George Lucas's original idea for Luke Skywalker's surname, but he changed that because he thought it felt too sinister, too evil. So makes perfect sense for an evil version of Luke.
I actually read, I think it was a tweet or something yesterday, that apparently they literally changed the name like halfway through shooting the film. And apparently Mark Hamill was like annoyed that he had to do some bunch of scenes again and thought it was sounded like a pansy name. He preferred Luke Star Killer.
I want to be Star Killer.
Yeah, I guess that fits in with what else we know about Star Wars. I mean, like Return of the Jedi was going to be called Revenge of the Jedi until like a few months before it came out. Like there are posters for it as Revenge of the Jedi and stuff. So George has got form on this.
Yeah.
So yeah, Star Killer, he's voiced by and motion capped by a fan favourite Star Wars actor called Sam Witwer, who goes on to do Darth Maul in all the TV shows. So Star Wars fans love that aspect of it. So yeah, story-wise, as I say, you're hunting down and killing Jedi Masters at the start of the game. You even get to cause the death of Shaq T, who Star Wars fans might remember dies all of the time. She dies in a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith. She dies in a different way in a different deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith. She dies in one of the TV shows. She's killed by General Grievous. And she dies in this game. And she dies in two different ways in this game, depending on which version you've got. In the mobile version, she dies in a different way from the version that I played. So there's 5 versions of this character's death, and you get to enjoy one or other of them in Force Unleashed. So that's...
Can I...
I'm buying it. I'm buying it.
Yes, Sofie.
Is she canon alive? Now?
No, she's
Does she just keep dying
the TV show one will be canon, so she is dead.
No. The TV one is not canon. It's from the 2003 Clone Wars show, which was taken out.
The 2D one. The 2D.
I want everyone to know that this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
I've got a bit about canon later on. Don't you worry. But I think
this is why I don't
remember which one.
This is ridiculous. Go ahead.
Anyway, so as you keep playing the game, the Emperor eventually discovers that Vader has been secretly training you, and as an act of loyalty, Vader pretends to kill you, but in fact hides you away and sends you to sort of infiltrate and foster like the nascent rebellion, who you may remember from the original trilogy. The story goes from there. You meet a number of characters who you sort of travel with, including your love interest, Juno Eclipse, and then from there you either pretend to help the rebellion in order to infiltrate it, or you genuinely betray Vader and are actually working for the rebellion. To be clear, though, that doesn't manifest in the game, really. That's just how you choose to interpret events. At the end of the game, there's a big light side or dark side choice for you to basically confirm whether your guy was secretly in the rebellion or secretly not in the rebellion. But nothing through the game lets you sort of decide which one you're doing. It's just how you're choosing to read events. I went for the light side choice because I'm a good boy. But,
of course. I mean,
said,
you are the bad boy of the Red Barrels podcast.
Shit, yeah.
No, actually,
I mean, I went for the dark
side.
Sorry, guys.
Lie, Ed. Lie.
I will say there is a sequel to this game, Star Wars Force Unleashed 2, which is not meant to be very good. And I believe in that game, you've canonically made the dark side choice. So make of that what you will. In the behind the scenes stuff that I watched, they talked a bit about how they thought they were delivering like some emotional weight with these films, like the love interest especially. They were talking about the themes of the game, like redemption, and saying afterwards, after you've played this game, you won't see episodes 3 and 4 the same way again. You'll view this game as like a necessary. No, definitely not. This game is like fine. The story's fine, but it's definitely pretty perfunctory. The story is a means to an end of delivering cool Star Wars-y moments. And, it does deliver some cool Star Wars-y moments. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's got some cool stuff. If not, no. On the other hand, when we're comparing it to God of War, it doesn't have the over-the-top sex stuff, so that's a plus.
Always.
I don't know. I think George would be up for it.
Well, we can talk about George a little bit, because I've got the other question. The other question we just went around there, it's for you deep nerds in the audience here. Is this game canon? No.
The answer is no. It's not.
The answer is no.
I was
this
ahead
game
of
is
the
not
nerd
canon.
curve there. I'm very proud of myself, but also disgusted by myself.
Well, why is this game not canon? Well, the game is not canon because when Disney bought Star Wars, they made everything not canon apart from the main films, the Clone Wars TV show and the Rebel TV show. But was it intended to be canon when it came out? Maybe. The developers in the behind the scenes seem very enthusiastic about it fitting in with the canon. They get everything signed off by George. They had this almost like cute bit where they talked about getting a fax from George where they've written all the things they want to include in the game, and he's like ticked off the ones that George Lucas will let them use, and he's written little notes in the margins, and they're very excited about it because it sort of makes it like it is canon. George, for example, says that they need to hit all the main character archetypes that Star Wars has. There needs to be a Jedi Master. There needs to be a love interest. There needs to be a comedy droid sidekick. And the game does contain all of those things. And I remember when the game first came out, people were talking about it like as if it was an official continuation of Star Wars. I wanted to play it when it came out. I didn't get to, but I wanted to because I was like, I thought Star Wars was done. Like, there was Revenge of the Sith in 2005, and then there was never going to be any more Star Wars. And then 2008, you got the sort of shitty cartoon Clone Wars movie, which is not good, but the show's good. And then this game, and it's like, oh my God, Star Wars isn't dead after all. It's so exciting.
What a fool you were.
I know. I know. How wrong I have been.
The streets of a child.
But yeah. Maybe it was canon, maybe it's not. Back in the day, it didn't really matter whether it was canon or not. You could sort of make up your canon a little bit with the expanded universe. There are parts which definitely don't make that much sense if it's canon. For example, the Force, it makes you feel like a Force badass, but they partially do that by the Force being much stronger and more flashy than it ever normally looks. You might say that the Force has been unleashed.
Wow.
That's the title of the game.
That's the game, guys.
You did the thing. You did the title of the thing.
There's even there's a fan favorite scene where Starkiller grabs a Star Destroyer using the Force and pulls it down to the planet, which is very powerful.
Wow,
and you're like, how
cool.
does this guy do that? And the Chosen One doesn't seem to have that capacity, so I'm not sure. And if it is canon, then it would be the light side ending specifically that is canon, because I won't tell you the dark side ending, but it would really fuck stuff up for A New Hope. So that didn't happen.
But you said that the sequel, the dark side
follows the dark side
canon is so the sequel was
the dark side
definitely never
definitely not canon.
I'm going to say this again.
Correct.
This is a ridiculous franchise. This is ridiculous.
Politically, there is not a great deal to say about the game. Some of what you would say about the game is the same as God of War in terms of the sort of politics around like a masculine power fantasy vibe. Like that's definitely as present here as it is in God of War. Another thing that I think that Star Wars does a lot with its politics is sometimes it's quite a political franchise. Obviously, Andor's quite obvious with that, and George has specifically said that the original Star Wars was meant to be an analogy for the Vietnam War, and the rebels were the Viet Cong, and America was the Empire. Like there's all that politics in it, but at the same time, one of the most cool things in Star Wars and one of the most iconic things in Star Wars is Darth Vader, who's bad. He's a bad man. He's not good. So in order for you to sort of enjoy how like cool Darth Vader gets to be, you have to be like aggressively apolitical. You have to sort of put your fingers in your ears with the sort of, canonically Vader does a lot of genocides and a lot of killing of innocent people in this time period, and you're sort of helping him in this game, but you don't consider that too much. Just don't think about it. And if you do think about it, make it really individual. It's all like, it's all like, oh, it's my inner, my inner conflict. Is it the light side or the good side? Am I going to be a good guy or a bad guy? It's like so apolitical with its like what really in reality would be deeply political actions of like ethnic cleansing and stuff. So there's something interesting in that, like in how a thing which is kind of political has to depoliticize itself in order to present the bad guy as like fucking cool and super iconic. And he is cool, but only if you allow yourself to depoliticize Darth Vader. So that's what I would say about the politics of the game. Limited, and if you really thought about it, bad. But it really goes out of its way to get you to not think about it, and I basically didn't think about it. I did also mention the gender politics. There's like 2 women in the game, maybe. One of them is a woman you might recognize from the Star Wars franchise. I won't give you any spoilers, but you can probably work it out. And
is it Leia pretty much the only woman in the Star Wars franchise?
Well, I don't know. I could neither confirm nor deny.
Wow.
She may be in it. Maybe she's not.
Wow.
Who knows?
Either way.
And then there's the love interest, Juno Eclipse. So the gender politics are more like the absence of women, really. It's not. Again, it's not like God of War where women exist in the game, but mainly to be sexual objects and like very explicitly and sort of quite crudely. It's more like there's one woman. She's like the token woman, essentially. You remember woman, don't you? Here's one. You wanted a woman?
I've heard of them.
Here's a woman.
Women exist, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you know about the woman. I don't know. I mean, yeah, she's like very Star Wars coded woman. Like she's sort of like, got her own thing. She's like a strong, independent woman kind of vibe, but like she's not a very well developed character. Do you know what I mean? She's just sort of there, and that's partially, yeah. That's probably just as much because of their inability to tell like an emotionally resonant story as it is from anything else. Like the story is not emotionally engaging in any way. So yeah, that's pretty much the game. That's the Star Wars stuff done, the gameplay done. It's very straightforward. It knows what it wants to do. It does it well enough. It makes you feel like a powerful Force user, which, as I say, was their main goal. It's very fast paced, very simple, but flashy, and a very easy game. I first tried to play this game about 10 years ago and I bounced off of it. I got bored after a couple of hours. This time, I played the whole game very quickly. It took me 7 or 8 hours maybe from start to finish. If it was any longer, you absolutely would get bored of it. But if you're in the right mindset of playing a like simple, easy game that's mainly aimed at 12-year-olds, and if you're just in a Star Wars mood, this scratches the Star Wars itch for me. And sometimes, I get the hankering for some Star Wars. So this scratched the itch. No, I know.
Can't relate.
So
this is going to be my bit for this episode. That has been my bit. It's just, Mino likes Star Wars.
Guys, get it? Sophie
get it?
Doesn't like the Star Wars.
There she goes again.
Luke Solo?
Luke Solo.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say.
I do think there is something interesting in the idea of the kind of apoliticization of evil in Star Wars. Like it was kind of a thing that like people used to say. I think like there's been more Star Wars and they've kind of fleshed out a bit, and obviously there's Andor now as well. But like back in the day, it was like, well, are the Empire really bad? Okay, they blow up a planet with the Death Star, but other than that, you don't really see anything bad about them. They just like have sinister looking uniforms and shit, right?
I will say that's quite a big caveat.
Yeah, that's
Aside
true.
from a colossal genocide that happens on screen.
That's true, but that's also
and also the general torturing of our lead characters.
That's true.
Other than everything they do on screen.
Hugo Bossian style.
It's not clear.
Because those uniforms are Hugo Boss.
Yeah.
Let's
like
be
very
honest.
Nazi coded. Yeah.
The destruction of the planet is made clear. This is the first time this has ever happened. Like it's not clear at all in those original trilogy that like it's bad to live under the Empire for basically anyone. They do a couple of bad things, but like does it actually impinge on people's lives in any real way? Right? I'm just saying that the fact that they don't really get into it means, at least at that time, means that there's kind of a big hole for people to just think the Empire is really cool. I remember, I don't know, maybe they're still doing it, but for a long time there were a bunch of like this like quite relatively famous group of fans who organized themselves as a stormtrooper like unit. They called themselves like the 401st or some number. Imperial stormtrooper unit, and they like got all the armor. They like made it themselves, or they got like really good replicas of the ones from the films, and they like would turn up to conventions and stuff, and they'd do like drills, and they'd parade up and down, and people and like things like that. And I think even Lucasfilm and maybe Disney afterwards kind of indulged them, and like had like sometimes a guy dressed as Darth Vader come out and like do shit with them, stuff like that. And it's just like, why would you want to do that? What is the fun bit of pretending to be fascists, but it's okay because they're like barely sketched out fascists, And I feel like this game is kind of part of that. I mean, like this is maybe a bit more explicitly, yes, you are an evil guy. You're indulging in the dark side of the Force, which they go on about and stuff like that. But there's still like something about the fact that like they're fascists, but they, at least until relatively recently, really didn't get into how they're fascists, And it's just a weird thing about Star Wars and like maybe some other media and stuff, like, I don't know,
I was
kids'
gonna
cartoons
say,
and stuff. Yeah,
Go on, Sophie.
go for it.
but I wanted to say that it reminds me a lot, and I was a Harry Potter girl growing up. I was a Harry Potter child, obviously not anymore. Fuck J.K. Rowling, read another book. But I think Harry Potter did very much the same thing as well, where it's also very apolitical, where if you examine it with any level of sincerity, then the sort of Death Eaters, I think the closest allegory would probably be the KKK. I think they're sort of designed quite similarly, obviously just in opposites of color robes, etc. They're all anonymous and dressed all in black with pointy hats. So, and I guess their goal is to like literally annihilate everyone who isn't pureblood mage, witches, or wizard, that is just Nazi shit. But yeah, but also kind of something similar happened as well, where like people got like Death Eater tattoos and people cosplay as Death Eaters and stuff. And it's like, this is really fashy. It's very weird that we, with any level of examination, it's like this should be quite a bit more. This is quite fashy. But even I think when J.K. Rowling was writing it, I think she was thinking of it as, I think she probably thought of the KKK as like the most evil thing you can be. And like evil is pronounced like that, just in terms of this like comical understanding of evil, that someone is either good or they are bad, and bad people do bad things and believe bad things, and good people do good things and believe good things. And this is why like J.K. Rowling has her own very specific psychology about like transness and how she thinks that she can be a good person whilst also being a transphobe, is just because she believes she's a good person. And it's this kind of weird representation of like fascism and goodness and evilness being equated with just like core part of your being. Like, the whole thing about like Voldemort and Harry Potter is just evil because his parents didn't love him enough. And it's like, I don't think we're examining enough why people do bad things. And it's very interesting that these sort of big franchises, and I do think that like Harry Potter and Star Wars were kind of like sister franchises in a weird way, around the same time. I know my brother was super into Star Wars and I was really into Harry Potter, and he dunked on me and I dunked on him, So like it's very interesting that happens, especially when it's aimed at like kids.
I was into both as a kid. I know we've gone on for a while on this one. But I would say the politics of Star Wars are a lot better developed and more interesting, and also more left wing than Harry Potter. Fundamentally,
absolutely.
Like George Lucas was at least at some point a very left wing guy. Relatively, I don't know. He's probably a billionaire now, right? So who can say? But like, but yeah, exactly. Fuck him. But you can see that in his films, and I think. Especially the prequels are almost aggressively political to the point that they're quite boring sometimes with it.
Definitely.
So I think it's true that people manage to fetishize the cool imagery, and there has been a lot of like depoliticizing of the cool imagery in Star Wars around the villains. But I also think it does go quite far out of its way to show you that these guys are really fucking bad.
Yeah, no, I
would
100% agree. Like, I mean, even just the Empire, obviously, it is just imperialism. Like, obviously, Harry Potter doesn't do that.
Yeah. I would say what I was saying before is like since the prequels, it's changed a lot. And I will just say very quickly, on the tangent of Harry Potter, I have always maintained that the true villain of Harry Potter is that fucking hat that puts one quarter of wizard children into the Hitler Youth. Why are they letting them do that? Why don't they just not have the hat decide everything? I don't know.
Just don't have the house. Just don't have the Hitler Youth
that
house.
Seems like that would be a good idea to literally not radicalize 1/4 of all the children.
Just have three. The 3 houses. Yeah.
Seems to me that would be a good idea.
Solve all their problems.
I guess JK's got other ideas.
Yeah.
So, right. In summary, as I expected to end this Star Wars review, the sorting hat is a bastard.
Yeah.
And that's what I got to say on Star Wars The Force Unleashed.
Yeah.
The Star Wars fans are going to hate me for hijacking this conversation and turning it into Harry Potter. They're going to fucking hate me for that. And that was the whole point.
Wow.
You're welcome.
We got owned. Ed.
We got. Don't worry, we'll get you back. We'll turn one of your more interesting things into a Star Wars thing.
No, what we'll do is that we'll strap her down and make her watch fucking Andor, like I've been saying for months.
I'll close my eyes. I'm not gonna watch it.
I'll outline to you in great detail George's original 12-part plan for the Star Wars franchise, and you will hear about the wisps. And there's nothing you can do about it.
None of it's canon. I don't
think
care.
You mean the wills. I think you're referring to the wills.
I do mean the wills. I do mean the wills. Thank you.
Fake fan. Okay.
What's wisps from? Sonic, maybe.
There are wisps in Sonic. Yes, there are.
Yeah, it's Sonic.
They're in Sonic color.
Anyway,
I'm really revealing too much about myself. All right. Okay. Well, we're done with Star Wars. We're done with Dave the Diver, which means inevitably we come to Claire Obscure Expedition 33, the clear conclusion to that trilogy of themes. Yeah. So that's the game. Well, I would say I've been playing, but to be totally honest and transparent with the audience, I finished this game like 6 months ago, but I have wanted to.
Done this.
Sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
That's so brave of you to be honest about that, though, Alex. Thank you so much for sharing. And our audience, I'm sure.
I'll leave it to the audience to think about whether I'm a hero or not. It's up to them. But I wanted to talk about this game for a long time, and also this seems to be very much in the kind of discussion for Game of the Year. This pretty much seems like if you had to make a bet now, what Game of the Year was going to be, it would probably be this. So I do think it's worth talking about because there is some interesting stuff in here. So this is, as I mentioned before, a game made by a relatively small team. They are called, what are they called? They are called Sandfall Interactive. It's published by Kepler Interactive. I don't know why they're both called Interactive, but there we go. They're just not very original. And it came out earlier this year. And this is a game made in France, which you can tell because it's an extremely French game. Literally, there are secret, like special enemies you can find that are mimes. And when you kill the mimes, when you kill the mimes, you get special, what's called baguette gear. And this is like very classically French clothes, like the white and blue striped shirts and a baguette to strap to your back.
They did themselves
and a
dirty
beret,
this
way. A little beret. You can wear a little beret. So they go full on France in this game. And in fact, the game literally opens on a shot of the Eiffel Tower. But it's like all fucked up, man. It's really fucked up, like all gnarled and shit, man. It's like it's not your dad's Eiffel Tower. It's like an edgy modern Eiffel Tower. Yeah,
fucking rock on, my dude.
I'll get to the story in a minute, but basically, this is a really interesting game because it's pretty much a JRPG in the style of a kind of a 3D Final Fantasies, kind of like Final Fantasy X, probably the most. And so you're like got a small party, you get into, they're not random battles, but you fight an enemy on the field. But when you do, the game kind of swishes around and you're in a kind of instance little space where you're just having a turn-based battle. One character attacks and another character attacks and then the enemy attacks, all that. And it's very kind of character-based. It's definitely a love letter to those games. There's a map screen where you're like a little miniature version of the character walking around on this map, just like a lot of those old games. And eventually you effectively get an airship that you can fly around in. So it's a real love letter to all those old games, and kind of like a showcase that kind of style of game isn't kind of dead. They could bring it back because this game is also very pretty. It's made in Unreal Engine 5. That's one of the reasons it's really impressive. It's made by such a relatively small team. And, I guess, not that I particularly want to give giant corporation Epic props, but the fact that their engine can be used for this by a small team to make such a nice looking game. It's impressive. So gotta give it to them. Gotta hand it to them, I guess.
Jesus, Alex, you've really sold out.
Man, I'm sorry. But it is
You've
noticeable.
Changed,
like,
man.
I will say, like, it
Used
does
to be
it does look
cool.
quite generic. I think they're using a lot of like.
What happened to the edgy Eiffel Tower, man?
Sorry, man. The battle system actually in this game is very interesting because the kind of thing that it breaks away from those Final Fantasy games is that it's got two things you can do for literally every attack. You can either dodge, which has a relatively large window, or you can parry, which has a smaller window. It's harder to parry. And if you parry, you'll inflict damage against them. Either way, you won't take damage if you manage to do this. And so as a result, it means that basically, theoretically, you could fight the final boss at the beginning of the game, because if you just had the timing down perfectly and could perfectly dodge or parry every single attack. So this game is just full of these optional bosses. Like every area you'll go in will have at least one that you'll have to go find a little side route to find out, and then there'll just be some big enemy that you probably don't want to fight. But if you do fight it, you can beat it, theoretically, because theoretically you could just never get hit.
Can we assume that you beat the game by fighting the final boss straight away, or did you take the coward's way out and play through the game first?
You can't actually fight the final boss, but just theoretically, it's not like
you can't.
It's not like an open world thing. You have to go through the whole story to get there. But but theoretically, you could take on any of these. If you encounter one of these bosses, you can beat them. You just have to be absolutely expert. And the answer is no. I did very few of the optional bosses because I was very bad at the timing. And I've always been not a big parry fan in general, but it is cool that it's in there, and the dodging is fun, and it really adds an element to it. There's also a huge amount of kind of customization, so you can really make these. Each character plays very differently. They have like a completely different system of how their attacks work, and you get these things called pictos that can make changes to things, and there's all sorts of weird pictos that seem like they don't really do anything, but you can create an elaborate build. You can see a whole loads of them on the internet, on YouTube, these elaborate super builds where, like, for instance, there's one picto that just immediately kills you, which seems like it would not be something you'd want. But there's other pictos that you can have that like give all your other characters buffs if your character dies. So if you want your character to immediately die in battle, so they get buffs, and then maybe they can also actually resurrect themselves. And so it works out. And so there's just all sorts of like weird little things like this. So you can really kind of build very elaborate ways of playing the game that like completely break it so that you're like just doing ridiculous damage. And that's where a lot of the super bosses come in, because that's pretty much like, especially like there's like one super boss and you pretty much have to do some insane build to defeat that boss. I didn't even get to that, but I know it's in the game. So it's like it's genuinely, of all those, I love all those, most of those. Actually, I don't like Final Fantasy X. Sorry, gang. I think it's overrated. But I love a lot of those old Final Fantasy games. But this is like maybe the best like combat of any of those type of games that I've played. I mean, I'm sure there's disputes over that, but it is like a really good one that like also just takes kind of a lot of modern concepts in, and it's kind of just, I don't know, if I love these like ultra huge budget modern Final Fantasies. I've talked a lot about the Final Fantasy VII remake, but if they ever did want to just like pare it back a bit and make a kind of old school Final Fantasy like this, I think it could really take a lot of influence from the battle system and do something really special. Yeah, so the battle system's really cool, but like the story is kind of what's kind of most interesting, I think, about the game. So as I said, it's the first thing you see is the fucked up Eiffel Tower. There's also the Arc de Triomphe, which is like split in half, man. It's
not so triumphant anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. But what you're seeing is not Paris. It's a place called Lumiere, where there's all these people who live there, and it's very much based on Belle Epoque, turn of the century Paris. So it's got that kind of vibe to it. All the costumes are like that as well, all the characters. So it's a really interesting, even for not just being a French game. It's like a French and very specific kind of era, which is quite unique in games. I don't know if I've ever seen a Belle Epoque game. So that in itself, it feels quite unique. But the setting is very interesting. So the reason it's called Expedition 33 is that in this world, basically this city of Lumiere existed, and then one day some shit went down, and on the horizon a monolith appeared, and a giant woman in the distance called the Paintress went up and painted a number on
what?
What?
The Pinterest?
The Paintress.
Oh, the Paintress. Okay.
A lady.
It's the Pinterest,
kind of
and I was like, what a
no,
weird
the Pinterest.
brand
Plot twist.
collaboration.
It was Pinterest all along.
No.
Sorry.
It's kind of. I mean, really, it should just
Pinterest
be.
fucked
A
up the
woman
Eiffel
painter
Tower.
is a painter, but I guess they decided to jazz it up and call her the Paintress. Yeah. Anyway,
Pinterest.
so this woman goes
Someone's
up
really
and
been hitting that Duolingo.
she paints a number. I think the first one is just 00, but it actually stands for 100. And this means that everyone who is that age or above in the city dies. And this happens every single year. She paints one number down. So every year, like the next year, everyone 99 and above died. And then every year that got down further and further until the year that we see in the game is 33. It's 34 at the start when in the intro, and then she gets up and she paints 33, and everyone who is 33 and above dies. They disappear into like petals, and they call it the gommage, which is a painting term. And there's a lot of painting stuff in this game. It's evidenced by the name, the Paintress.
It's a subtle nod to the fact that painting.
Put it on your Paintress board.
Pin in that.
So this is and to kind of and as an attempt to combat this issue, every year there is an expedition that is sent out of the people who have basically 1 year to live, and they sail off to the other continent where this monolith appears to be, and they're going to try and fight them or defeat them or something. But I think apart from maybe the very first one, someone came back, no one has ever come back. So no one even really properly, other than some very vague stuff, no one really knows what's even on the other continent or what the whole situation is there. And so now we're down to 33, and our characters are all part of the expedition number 33. So I guess they're 32 because all the 33-year-olds just died, except for one character who's like 19 who comes along for various other reasons, part of the plot. And the intro to this game where we see this demonstrated for us is like very effective, and it really paints this picture of like this real kind of sadness and bleakness. It's extremely well done of this society, and like you've got people talking about like, oh, should we have children because that number's coming down, and eventually there's going to be no one to even look at.
Literally numbered.
Yeah, no one's even going to be able to look after the children, and they then not much long after that they'll die. So is it right to do that? But maybe you should have children to just like keep humanity alive as long as possible. Things like that. These are the kind of discussions they have. And I think there's a very obvious kind of, I mean, for one thing, it's already kind of unique that these are like clearly just like inherently millennials, right? They're literally 32. Their age is clearly defined. And that's a little old for a game like this. Like those JRPGs are obsessed with age. In Final Fantasy VII, one of the characters is like a grizzled old man who's too old for this shit and complains about hanging out with these young'uns and stuff. And according to the instruction manual, he's literally like 32. Because all the others are like teenagers or like 21. So basically, it's got this real kind of ennui to it, and it's like feels like it's very much like the feelings that like a lot of people now have about like climate change and, should we have children? Is it worth bringing into this world with everything that's happening? So it definitely seems like it's plugging into like a millennial malaise or bleakness. And that's like, I don't know, quite refreshing that, it's not directly about actual political events, but just it really has the vibe of it. And like, obviously, you're with the team that goes into on this expedition. So it kind of settles on, oh, you should fight against against the darkness. But there's also just like a lot of kind of quite mature, small m mature kind of writing and characterization in this. For instance, like the kind of main character is a man, and then all the other side apart from like one kind of weirdo non-human character, all the other characters are women. So there is a little bit of a harem element about it. Not much, but a little bit. And your character at one point, you can talk in this campfire between story events with your team members. And at one point, with one of the characters, you can have sex with them. And it's not like a big deal. They're both adults. They're like in their 30s. They're both single. And it's not like a Purian thing. You don't see a sex scene. It's just like implied that they have sex. And also, it's not like the end of like a romance quest line. It's not like it's not like a big build up and then finally they do it. It's just like, yeah, two people who are together. They're in this weird situation. They don't know if they'll live to the next day because it's dangerous. And yeah, they just decide, hey, do you want to have some fun? And it's just like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen that kind of casual thing happen in a game, even though obviously it happens in real life all the time. So it does have a quite mature feeling to it in that way. That's very refreshing. My only real problem with the game is the end, which I'll talk about in very vague terms. But the two problems with it are that one, at the end of the game, you have to make moral choice, right? And this isn't like The Force Unleashed, where it's like the good or bad choice. It's two choices that are like crushing. You have to choose between these two awful choices. There's no good answer, right? But the problem is that you can think of about 20 other things they could do, right? Like compromises between them, or just what other ways around it. Like you could like at least imagine, or at least they could discuss and consider. And they just don't. You have these two bad choices, and that's it, which is extremely frustrating. But kind of worst of all is that about halfway through the game, so at the beginning of the game, as I said, the whole thing is about saving the people of Lumiere. All the people you've seen, they're going to die either soon because if something terrible happens, or eventually. Maybe there's some way to bring everyone back. Maybe that could happen through magical ways or whatever. That's like the absolute thing you are dealing with at the beginning of the game. But at some point around halfway in the game, quite early on, it starts to begin, but it starts to take over. It becomes about this family drama. Everything's involved in this like one family that's like causing everything, basically. And
sounds a lot like Star Wars.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a lot more kind of magical and overarching than that. But it is all just as one family. And as you play the game, it just gets more and more about the family. And by the end of the game, the existence of like the entire world you've been exploring and all the people you've met and all the assumed hundreds or thousands of people who live there who you don't see, but you just assume that like there's a large population of people. They are barely relevant to that choice. It is like, oh well, it's really about the family, and like, oh well, no, I guess there's some of these people as well there. And I mean, I don't know, it's too much to say this, but there's something that kind of just feels like kind of fascist about it. That just like the entire population just ceases to have that much importance in the game. I mean, okay, this is a spoiler, but I would say of the choices, the two choices you make, I mentioned, the one that seems like it's like the canon, probably the right thing to do, even though it's gutting, does basically mean that everyone except for that family dies in the entire world. And it's not really like that issue is not really treated as like a counterweight to that. It's like, well, we should do this thing because it's the right thing to do, really, even if we don't want to. But like, oh, but this will kill everyone, is not really properly even presented as a counter to that, right? So I find it like really frustrating. I mean, I think that ending alone kind of knocks it off of like Game of the Year contention. I think it's still a very good game. I think it's worth playing. It's great in many ways. Got some great music, but just that ending was so kind of frustrating and annoying and kind of disappointing that I find it difficult to say that it's like a truly great game. I will say that it's called Clair Obscur : Expedition 33 because there are hooks for other games in the Clair Obscur series that are very different from each other, but are linked in kind of vague ways. A bit like Final Fantasy, but linked a little bit.
I think the reason they chose a name like that is because they're trying to be a JRPG, and that's the most JRPG thing they possibly could have done was had a colon and a number and a word that doesn't mean anything in the title. The only thing that they missed out on by having a name that was inspired by a JRPG is they didn't put re colon anywhere. Where's my re colon? Then it would have been a true JRPG.
Well, look, it's never going to reach the heights of Kingdom Hearts' names. Let's be honest.
Clair Obscura 365.
But I will say, Clair Obscur Clair Obscur is also a painting term, and it's French, so it does actually mean something. You've just besmirched the entire French language there.
Wow.
True bigotry.
Oui,
true bigotry.
I go tomorrow.
Sacre bleu. So do we think this, is it an accident? Did they just forget to make everyone else count? Or are they trying to communicate something by doing that?
I mean, no,
like,
there is some of it. I'm just saying it's just like, it's really not treated with the kind of, that this is the weight of the thousands of people is like, well, it's not there. They mention it, so they definitely remembered it's there. They just don't really care that much, and that's kind of the issue.
They weren't trying to make a point about the characters or something.
I don't think so. No, not really.
By doing that,
not really.
Okay.
No. I mean, I'd have to get into real spoilers to explain further.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think they definitely knew about it. They just didn't really care that much, and that's what kind of annoys me.
Roger that.
Right.
Cool.
And that's it for Clair Obscur, which means light and dark, by the way. Some people saying that French isn't a real language. That's what it means.
Expedition. My favorite kind of expedition.
The 33rd one. The 33rd.
I have to say to that.
All right. Well, we're getting on to the news.
But...
Bad Blood's over. Our eternal war with France is over. We're getting on to Gamescom. In the news, Gamescom, it's a show. It's happening in Germany, not France. We're moving over a little bit, but we're still in Europe. And it happened, the big opening show hosted by, I think at this point we can call him the patron saint of the podcast, Jeff Keighley.
I almost quoted him in my thing earlier, by the way. I was so close to quoting Jeff. I was like, no, I can't.
You should have done. We should mention Jeff Keighley as often as possible. But he inevitably has like a show launching it. It's a bit. Gamescom is like a big games showcase show. You can go visit and play games there if you want. If you live in Germany or you just want to go there. But before the show, there was a little bit of extra because Nintendo had a Snap Direct where they showed off their new game, Kirby's Air Riders. And I just want to mention this briefly because Kirby's Air Riders is from Masahiro Sakurai, who's the previous creator of the Smash Brothers games and has become beloved on the internet for his very lengthy videos where he would introduce each character in when they got added as DLC for those games and go in ridiculous depth about all the mechanics and everything, and just generally be quite charming. He also, I would say, I recommend, he has an extremely long YouTube series where he just goes over how game development and how it all works. It's a really great show. And at the end of it, he did a long video where he revealed that even he hadn't monetized the videos, and to make it had cost him like over $100,000. So big shout out to Masahiro Sakurai. But I just want to mention it because it feels like Nintendo just let him do whatever the fuck he wants these days, because he has a 45-minute long video for a game that does not really justify it. It seems like quite a simple, probably fun game. And he opened it. This is how he opens the video. He says, "Oh dear, why is making a game so hard?" That's his initial pitch for the game. Then he talks about the game a bit. And then he eventually gets to saying, and this is a direct quote, at least from the English translation, "What is Kirby Air Ride? The original, because the original game was on the GameCube. The original was widely viewed as a racing game featuring Kirby. You might be asking yourself if it's basically Mario Kart. You race and battle with familiar characters around courses with different features, or so they say. Okay, so it basically is like Mario Kart. I even mentioned this when I received the request to make the game. I asked them if they still wanted to do it.
This is so Japanese.
He does then go on to explain how it's different from Mario Kart, though it's worth saying it is still a racing game where you play fun characters around a course and you can fight, shoot things at each other as you go. And the twist on it, in the original game, there was a kind of a side thing that was kind of a real side thing, but it got a lot of fan love, where you could drive around this little open world in a multiplayer game, and you wanted to go around and find little power-ups and build yourself up, and then you would fight in like a coliseum or something. And they basically expanded this out for this game, and they made a big deal out of it. But, the new Mario Kart also has an open world. It also has extensive multiplayer. They could have probably genuinely just put that section as like a DLC for the new Mario Kart. So they just literally have just made, and it's coming out later this year. They just decided to put out 2 quite similar games, quite close to each other. And he's even just joking about it. So seems a bit odd to me. Anyway.
Why are you making this face, Ed?
It's got Kirby in it. That's the big difference, Alex. That's what
I love Kirby. I'm a big Kirby fan.
It's a completely different game. They're not similar. One's got a man with a red hat, and the other one's got Kirby. So I don't really know what you're trying to drive at.
That's true.
Here.
You got a point. You got a point. Kirby is cannot be compared to anything. Although I will point out that in the Super Nintendo Kirby game, Kirby Superstar, the ultimate villain of the game is a clown who is literally called Marx with an X. So Kirby defeats Marx in this game.
Kirby is dead to me.
Is Kirby a reactionary? Question mark. Although I have seen a genuine theory.
We've got just enough time now for a quick episode of who would Marx main, Mario or Kirby, and we've just discovered the answer.
Yeah, it's true. I did. Although having said that, I did once read a theory on Reddit that had, I don't know, a not terribly ill thought out theory that the entire game is a Trotskyist allegory for how the Soviet Union under Stalin turned away from Marx. And Kirby is essentially, I guess, the Soviet Union or Stalin in this analogy. Anyway, I'll put that aside and we'll move on to Gamescom properly.
I don't know nearly enough about Nintendo to understand any of this. I'm going to be honest.
For some reason, they had a little pre-show that was half an hour long. And there were a lot of good games in the pre-show, many of whom which were more interesting than the actual show. So I'll talk about them, a few of them. One of them is, speaking of Star Wars, back in the 90s, LucasArts made a FPS called Dark Forces, Star Wars FPS. Back then, we called them Doom clones. They then used the same engine to make a cowboy game called Outlaws. Night Dive more recently they've been known for making these adaptations of these 90s shooters. They made one of Dark Forces, and kind of inevitably, they're now doing one for Outlaws. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this is because it has one of the most bizarre trailers I've ever seen for a game, because it's just a lot of footage of this game. As I say, it's an FPS, but in every single shot of this trailer, whoever's playing it misses. They shoot the gun, and in every single time, they miss. And it's very noticeable how it, literally, it's like trains the gun on one of these enemies, and then it moves slightly to the side and starts shooting. It's really weird. The only assumption we can make is that, when this trailer was made, they hadn't got, the animations for the being shot put in or something, but they still had to make the trailer. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. I advise people to check out this trailer. Moving on. Here's a game that looks like it has some sort of political element. It's almost certainly German. I haven't really looked into the background, but I'm saying it's almost certainly German because the name of this game is, and this is all one word, Planet en Verteidigungskanon en Commandant, or PVKK for short. And it seems to be that it's kind of like one of these little kind of job simulator games, but you are in a gun emplacement that shoots into space. And you just you have a little living area and you have to fix things in it. And there's a woman who comes up on a screen and gives you orders. But I just mention it because this is obviously German and it really seems to me, I'm no expert, to have a bit of a GDR vibe to it. They're really going for that kind of old school kind of 70s, 80s kind of communist East German vibe. And that's nice. That's nice for us, right? Even though probably it looks like the GDR or it's not actually the GDR. It's like some other fictional regime is probably going to be bad. But, it's nice for the aesthetic. We can enjoy that. Another game, Valor Mortis. This is quite uniquely, it's kind of a first-person Souls-like, but it appears to be set in the Napoleonic era with a bunch of Napoleonic soldiers, but that they all turn into monsters. That's kind of unique. I haven't seen that before. That looks cool. Another game, Routine. This is interesting because this game has been in development for 13 years. It first got shown off over a decade ago, and apparently it's actually going to come out later this year. It's kind of a horror game where you fight robots, but it's got a very kind of 80s style to it. And they've got some sort of kind of post-processing effect on it so that it kind of really looks a lot like video footage, which gives it quite an evocative style. So that's interesting and fun. Check it out. The actual show, pretty much the first thing they showed was Silk Song, Hollow Knight Silk Song.
Woo!
It's real. They showed some footage. Jeff Keighley said, and this is a quote,
Archbishop Jeff,
100% actually launching this year. That's what he said. And there's a demo at Gamescom apparently that you can play. There was no actual date announcement. However, there is Team Cherry, who makes that game, has an announcement coming on Thursday. It's Wednesday when we're recording this. It seems very likely that will be when they announce the date. But apparently it is at least coming out this year. And even famed game journalist Jason Schreier is apparently going to have some sort of article explaining why it's taken 7 years. So we'll find out. The next big game they had then was Black Ops 7. That's coming out this year. We will have another opportunity to see if the game journalism has the balls to ask if Blops is tops or plops.
Tops or plops.
I'm not holding out hope, but it might happen.
Now whenever I do see Black Ops, I just see Blops.
Blops or plops.
Blops. Blops 7.
That was our first ever episode, wasn't it?
yeah, it was.
We peaked very early.
I didn't expect another Blops just the next year. I didn't expect it, but they brought it. They're bringing it out. So this actually showed off some of the campaign, so we can maybe make some ideas about what the politics of it are. Seems like the politics are going to be, let's say, relatively apolitical. It's set in the future, so it's probably like just two corporations or something fighting each other. And also, it seems that like you're in some sort of kind of virtual world or dreamscape, because even though you're military dudes with like AK-47s and M16s and all that shit in classic Call of Duty style, and you're in real locations, off the top of my head, one of them is Angola. It's also surreal, like the road goes up into the sky and upside down, and there's like a giant man
Inception
going over it. So there's something going on. I think this will detract from the politics. But apparently this is building off of Black Ops 2, which is the one that included Oliver North, the real-life war criminal in the game. So who knows? I'll probably end up having to play it, even though it's under BDS, because I feel like there needs to be some sort of left critique of the politics in these games. But we'll see. As I said, it is under BDS, so if you wanted to actually play it, you probably shouldn't. Next up, Lords of the Fallen 2. This is another game that you shouldn't play, although I don't believe it is under BDS. The reason you shouldn't play it is because the guy who runs it has recently basically been banging on about how his game is zero woke and has absolutely no DEI in it. And they in fact issued a patch to a previous game to the I think this is actually I believe the pattern of these games is there was Lord of the Fallen, then the sequel was Lords of the Fallen, and now this is Lords of the Fallen 2. So that makes it Lord of the Fallen 3?
Come on.
Question mark. Anyway, one of those previous games apparently, had a character creator where I'm not entirely sure, but like the gender was ambiguated in some way. It was like body type 1 or 2 or something like that. He apparently issued a patch to it that retroactively made it male and female. to remove
sick.
the woke from the game.
I'm
What
rolling
a
my
badass.
eyes.
Yeah.
You certainly got us.
Rolling my
Man,
eyes, chat.
I'm so triggered right now,
Yeah,
guys.
he got us.
I'm
He got
so
us.
angry. He sure showed us woke
What a
boys.
snowflake.
So yeah,
He got
he
me.
seems like a bit of a wanker. Probably shouldn't play that game. Moving on. Next up, Lego Batman: Legacy of the Dark Knight. So I mention this because this is, there have been these Lego whatever games for decades now, and in fact, a guy came out to talk about this who I'm fairly sure gave a lecture at my university about the Lego games he was working on 20 years ago. So this has been his career, making Lego games, and I kind of just gotta respect that for just making that your career,
Yeah.
But this one, I mention it because this appears to be, it's obviously a Batman game in Lego form, but it appears to basically just be an Arkham Asylum game. It's like got an open world. You see there's a bit where they show the combat, and the combat looks almost identical to the old Arkham Asylum games. Like there's a bit where he sprays explosive on a wall and a bat symbol, just like he did in those games. So this is just like, they haven't made one of those Arkham games in a very long time. Rocksteady got forced to make that live service Suicide Squad game that bombed. So this is like your closest thing to an Arkham game that you've had for a very long time. And also, because it seems that one of the things they're doing, they have like a lot of like references or like jokey recreations of scenes from the various Batman movies. And apparently Bane is in it from Dark Knight Rises, but he appears to have the voice of Matt Berry, which is such a perfect thing. Like as soon as I heard that, I was like, this should have been, how have I not seen like edits of like Matt Berry doing the voice for Bane, and they just put on the muffle on his voice or something? How have I not seen that? Is that it? New York City? Exactly.
I was born in it.
Exactly. It's so perfect.
I love Matt Berry.
Is that everyone loves Matt Berry? So that seems like almost a reason to play this game alone.
Everyone watch it.
Yeah.
Everyone watch Garth Marenghi's Dark Place immediately.
100%. Next up, and I'm just saying this because I know there's a lot of people on the left who love Warhammer. There is a new Warhammer game, 40k, Dawn of War 4.
Which is about how much it will cost to play it.
Oh, yeah. It's probably cheaper than actually playing actual Warhammer, I'm sure. I know Dawn of War 1 and 2 were much beloved. I think 3 was considered a disappointment. I'm not playing any of those games, but that's what I heard. So 4's coming out. It's an RTS. They don't even make that many RTSs these days. So I'm sure that's going to have a lot of fans. Similarly, Europa Universalis 5. Those Paradox games also have a lot of lefty fans because it's a way to...
trans fans.
Oh, really?
Specifically trans women just love Europa Universalis.
Wow. That's an insight to the trans world I was not aware of. But good for them.
And Blahaj.
But I know a lot of people on the left like those games. There's like a bunch of... There's Crusader Kings, Europa Universalis, Victoria, and Hearts of Iron. I think those are like the 4 of them. Maybe there's one I'm missing. And they all kind of run into each other as they just go through history, and you can basically redress historical balances. You can make the Incans take over the world. You can have the Soviet Union win everything. You can have have every country turn communist. Probably not in Europa Universalis. That's like Renaissance era. It's a bit early for that. But there's plenty of historical atrocities to address, so I'm sure some people will enjoy that. Next up, it's not a game, but they showed off Fallout Season 2, the TV show Fallout. The first season was very good, and this one is basically they're going to New Vegas, and it's all New Vegas all the time. There is a lot of New Vegas in this game. Mr. House is in it. The Yes Man robot's in it. Caesar's Legion's in it. The little dinosaur where I think you meet the character Boone, from what I remember. That dinosaur's in it. So I know you're a big New Vegas fan, Ed. So you might want to watch this. So it definitely seems like
I haven't watched season 1 yet.
How do you feel about? I guess because it's New Vegas, but it's by the people who didn't do New Vegas, right?
Well, it's a TV show.
How do we?
So
I know, but I think the people involved in the TV show are involved in the.
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, Bethesda have been somewhat involved, but I do recommend watching that first season because it is.
I've watched it. I didn't like it.
Oh, really? Did you not? Well, I would disagree, but I would say the first season is inspired a lot more than by the original Fallout games, which I know you've played, Ed, because you've talked about them on here, than it is by the more recent Bethesda games. And they seem to be cementing that by going to New Vegas, which was by sort of the same team as the original Fallout games. So I think you'd like it. You'd like it.
Thank you. Maybe I'll check it out, and then I'll be the arbiter of who was correct out of you two, once and for all.
I liked it
and that's
for
when
Fallout.
The factions can begin.
I will summarize my thoughts very briefly in that I liked it for Fallout reasons. I disliked it for every other reason.
Okay. All right.
Roger.
I think my thoughts are too complicated to go into, but I did think it was
Mine
good.
are complicated too, Alex. I'm just not
Hey,
trying
man,
to
hey, look, I'm
Mine
just
are
trying,
even
take
I'm
up
more
all the time
complicated
on
than
the
this.
pod.
I'm just trying to keep it snappy because
yeah.
Talk
Keep it
about my
punchy.
opinions
20
on
minutes in.
Fallout, the Fallout TV show that nobody's going to agree with.
all right, hey.
I know that, but
Ooh. Can
Anyway.
have a Fallout special one day.
Well, I know genuinely when the new series comes out, mate, we'll
at the pub
discuss
one
it on
day,
the
I'll
show.
tell you about my long opinions about the Fallout TV show.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not so look. I'm sure they're good. I'm just saying we gotta keep going.
I genuinely want to hear them.
Keep going, let's go.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to keep going is because this is the juiciest bit. Because, and I mean, my two co-hosts live in fear of the day I finally get a soundboard set up for this podcast. You know it'll come one day.
No,
but
it better not.
But when I do, you know I'm going to have a proper for this because it's a Zalmageddon update. That's right.
Whoa.
We have updates in Zalmageddon. Firstly, before Gamescom actually happened, a few days before it, coincidentally, our, let's say, unwitting friends of the show, People Make Games. If you'd come to Games Transform, you could have hung out with the People Make Games crew. They were there. But we haven't mentioned the actual podcast, so they don't know about it yet, okay? But they made a new video. They a follow-up to their previous 2.5 hour long video on the whole Zaum situation. This is only 2 hours long and kind of summarizes a lot of the stuff you probably heard already on the podcast. I'm sure they stole all our research for it. Also includes a bit of a mea culpa for what I would personally agree are some of the shortcomings of that original video. As good as it was, there were some quite big issues with it, and I think they've done well to have a bit of a mea culpa on it. But there's a long interview with Argo Chulik and Dora Klinzich, who is involved in a lot of things. So it's definitely worth checking out. I do recommend it. But more pertinently, at the Gamescom opening night live, Zaum officially unveiled their game. They'd previously done a bit of a teaser for it with the code name they had for it. I can't remember what the code name is. And it's irrelevant because we now have the actual name. And this game is going to be called Zero Parades. And on the kind of a logo they had where they showed this name, underneath it, there was a little banner. And it had like a follow-up to that Zero Parades, a name with a number of different slogans. Maybe we can infer something from that. The slogans were 4 fake radicals, 4 dead spies, 4 first-time leads, 4 missing pop stars, 4 music fetishists, 4 ex-bankers. What does that mean? Who knows? I will say that the game looks quite a lot like Disco Elysium, as you might imagine. They didn't actually show that much of it. It was a lot of concept art, but there were some brief bits of actual gameplay. It looks like you're probably going around alone more than you did in the game. There's no like sidekick like Kim Kitsuragi. It looks like it's probably made on the same engine. It's very similar art style. But they're definitely trying to lean into the Disco Elysium cred. Obviously, there's none of the original lead writers of that game are still at Zaum. There are still some people who did work on that original game there, but like not that many of them. And how much we can really say this is like a true successor is pretty debatable. I thought it was quite telling what Jeff Keighley's little intro to it was, which was, he said, and this is a quote, "Back in 2019, the groundbreaking CRPG Disco Elysium took home 4 Game Awards. Since then, Zaum, the studio behind it, has been through a host of changes, but tonight, 6 years later, those who now make up the studio are ready to give the world their very first look at their next CRPG. It's a dive into the shadowy world of espionage, where the truth can be stranger than fiction, and every failure isn't the end, but the start of a new path." So it seems that like Zaum are quite aware of the fact that a lot of people don't really consider this the true successor to Disco Elysium and are trying to cover their arse a bit. I will say that they also put up a Steam page and put some information on there. And I will say that says, a spy like no other, brilliant, burnt out, possibly cursed, you play as operant Herschel Wilk, alias Cascade. 5 years ago, you led your team into the abyss and have been haunted by your failures ever since. Now you've been recalled for a mysterious assignment that may give you a chance to prove yourself again. And then the next paragraph is, welcome to the end of history. Find yourself thrown into a three-way struggle for cultural and ideological power, played out across an unforgettable new city. In Zero Parades, the world itself is a character with its own secrets, traumas, and miracles for you to discover. So it seems like there might be a kind of a meta element where they're talking about 5 years ago they were led into disaster or something, because obviously that also basically happened to Zaum. You know, how much this is actually the true successor to Disco Elysium is, I mean, it pretty much just isn't, even if it is obviously made to look a lot like it. But at the same time, if there was no baggage around this game, you didn't know anything about it, it looks pretty cool. And there are a lot of decent people working still at Zaum, you know, employees who have had to put up with a great deal of bullshit. So I don't know, I'm kind of conflicted on my opinions on this. I guess we'll see. And if it's good, if it gets good reviews and stuff, I'll probably give it a go. But yeah, that's the newest update to Zamageddon. Moving on. Quite soon after this, they had a Gamescom Cares section, which was quite funny. These were where they put the serious games that are like going to help the world, gang. And this is specifically this year, they are games promoting democracy, whatever that means. There were 3 games they showed off. One was The Darkest Files. So The Darkest Files is a game that appears to be a true story about a real-life man whose name I forget, who is investigating and prosecuting in court the Nazis after the war. And also this appears to be a German game, so I guess they're like working through something. You know, Germany's got a lot to work through, especially these days. Suffice to say, there was no mention of, let's say, the biggest moral issue of our time in any of this. Yeah. The other games were one called Glass House, which was very much an Italian, made in Italy, but it very much appeared to be a Disco Elysium-like. It's a top-down CRPG with all the text on the right-hand side. But apparently it's set in a lockdown apartment block at the dawn of a world war. Which world war? We're not led to know. So it could be a number or maybe a fictional one. Who knows? And then the next one was Compensation Not Guaranteed, which is a game from Singapore, which is very obviously Papers, Please, but it is apparently set in a post-colonial country and all the characters are animals. So it may be a slightly light-hearted version, and I'm sure there are interesting things to go about post-colonial papers inspecting game. I'm not entirely sure that'll be, but apparently it promotes democracy. That's like the most political chunk that they allowed the show to be. Next up, Unbeatable, which is a stylish rhythm action game, which has been shown a bunch of times, got a very kind of anime style. Apparently got a story about like music being banned or something, so maybe there's some sort of political angle on it. It has had a lot of good buzz, and apparently it's out in November. This is interesting. So speaking of God of War clones, Ed, are you familiar with one made by EA called Dante's Inferno?
Aware that game exists?
Well, maybe you'll play it on your voyage to discover this subgenre.
Maybe I will. I should probably read the book first.
Well, yeah, famously, it's like a very kind of lurid God of War game based on the real life Dante's Inferno Renaissance literature. Well, guess what? It's happening again. That's right. An Italian studio is making La Divina Commedia, i.e. the Divine Comedy, which is the overarching text that Dante's Inferno was part of. And it actually looks quite a lot like the EA's Dante's Inferno, as inevitably it's a lot more Dark Souls-like in the combat, but it's actually, and it's a lot less lurid, but it looks quite similar in a lot of ways. So a weird thing to see again, another Dante's Inferno game. Also, we spoke about it a few episodes ago, Cult of the Lamb. They are getting a big expansion. Apparently, it is paid DLC, but it's apparently a very large chunk of an expansion called Woolhaven. All I can say about it is it looks snowy. It looks like it's going to be snow themed. There's a lot of winter.
Do you like Cult of the Lamb?
Yeah. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, the sequel to a beloved immersive sim, which has had a very troubled development. It was going to be made by a different company, and then they just basically got taken off of it. I think the company collapsed after that. And then it got taken over by the Chinese room, who recently made Still Wakes the Deep, I believe. They're making that. Apparently, it's finally coming out on October the 21st. We'll see how that turns out. And that's pretty much it of interesting games. They finished up with a bunch of big games, which are Ghost of Yotei, Resident Evil Requiem. They had trailers. They look cool, but there's not much to say more about them. And then the big final game was Black Myth Zongqi, which is a kind of sequel, possibly spin-off of Black Myth Wukong, which was big. Was it last year? Although apparently there is going to be a proper sequel to Black Myth Wukong that will follow up on that story. I heard that game ends with like a level that is literally called Unfinished, and the level is just unfinished, and it doesn't really have an ending. That's something I heard about that game. I don't know if it's true, but I heard it.
Really?
But that was Gamescom and Opening Night Live. Yeah. Bunch of games. A pretty good show, to be honest. Better than previous Gamescoms. There's usually been lower rent than the Summer Games Fest, and Summer Games Fest is already a bit low rent. There were some really genuinely interesting things there that I'm looking forward to.
Number one you're looking forward to, Alex? Number one?
I mean, I guess I'd probably say, if only for pure kind of curiosity, is Zam's Game Zero Parades. I am interested to see how that all turns out. You know, how good it will be.
What do you think, Sophie? Number one game?
I mean, yeah, probably that as well. Also, just out of curiosity, but I'm not hopeful. I feel like stuff that's developed out of conflict in this way usually just ends up being. I worry that it'll be weird and bitchy and this is what happened. So honestly, maybe the Cult of the Lamb DLC. I might get that because I really like Cult of the Lamb, and I really didn't. It was like some of the best money I've ever spent on a small game. So like I could spend more money on it. Sure, why not? What about you, Ed?
As we discussed in episode 9.
Well, I would assume, Ed, you're a big fan of Hollow Knight and the Silksong.
Yeah, still probably Silksong. Yeah. I don't know whether to believe that it'll be good or not, but I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah. I mean, I will say it looks a lot like Hollow Knight. I mean, I played Hollow Knight. I liked it enough. I think we've spoken about it before, but like, other than the main character is different, and like that main character was in Hollow Knight. Like, if you told me every single enemy and all the animation of that character was in the original Hollow Knight, I'd believe it. It looks basically identical, which, I mean, to be honest, my number one issue with Hollow Knight was I didn't like the visual style. I didn't like the way the sprites looked. I thought they looked kind of too much like Flash animation, and this looks exactly the same in that regard. So I'm not as up on it as it seems like the entire rest of the internet is, and my good co-host Ed. But I'm sure, I liked it. I did like it. I do want to.
Cool.
All right. So shall we move on to Ed's bit of news?
Yes. So I will be covering the payment provider censorship story that you may have even heard about, dear listeners.
I would just say, just to stop you.
Nope.
This first came up, literally, it got in the news, I think the day we recorded our last episode. But because it was the same day, we're like, well, we're doing the next episode, not knowing that I would be taken to hospital and we would have to miss the next episode. So this has been, I do feel like the deep state has been working against us, and they specifically timed this to avoid scrutiny on our podcast. Go ahead.
Maybe the payment providers one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure, it goes back a month, but you know what? It goes back even further than that. And I think I am going to have to take you back a bit, dear listener, because trying to make sense of this story involved clicking through a great many articles that went further and further back in time. So we're going to start 500 BC. No, we're going to start on March the 22nd, 2025, where a visual novel called No Mercy was released on Steam by developer Xerac Games. They described it as, quote, a 3D, choice-driven adult visual novel with a huge focus. I'm going to pause here. Dear listener, the following story contains references to non-consensual sex and a whole variety of things of that nature. So if that is not something you wish to listen to, please skip ahead to Sophie's section. Let me continue with the quote. A visual novel with a huge focus on incest and male domination, end quote. The game is said to feature unskippable non-consensual sex, incest, violence, blackmail, etc. It was tagged on Steam as, in the description, it read that it is popular in the NSFW game incest community, and its tagline was, "Take what's yours and show no mercy."
It
Wow.
just keeps getting worse.
Interesting.
I thought it couldn't get worse, and then it just kept getting worse.
Oh, it did.
Okay.
Shortly after its release, so it's kind of a complicated story in terms of how to feel about it. It's very nuanced, but shortly after its release, it was brought to the attention of an Australian pressure group called Collective Shout, a group who described themselves as fighting against the objectification of women and the sexualization of girls in media, and fighting against the increasing pornification of culture. Okay? But for some context, this pressure group, Collective Shout, were founded by Melinda Tankard-Reist, that might not be how you pronounce it, a self-described pro-life feminist and conservative Christian who spent many decades campaigning against porn of all kinds. She founded an organisation called Women's Forum Australia, who campaigned against porn, have been described by The Guardian as an anti-trans group.
Great.
And by the Australian newspaper, The Saturday Paper, as promoting conspiracy theories, specifically anti-Wi-Fi conspiracy theories, which is an interesting one.
Fun crossover.
Yeah. So within a couple of weeks of Collective Shout publishing an article about No Mercy, supporters had sent nearly 3,500 emails to Steam, and they'd also emailed government officials across Australia. And the Australian government banned No Mercy. They responded to these emails by banning No Mercy on April the 8th. On April the 9th, the UK Technology Secretary Peter Kyle talked about the game live on LBC. He complained about the game and complained about Steam as a platform for allowing this game on their platform. He suggested that Ofcom ought to force Steam to remove the game, although Ofcom said that's not really how they worked and they don't investigate individual complaints. But still,
So funny.
shortly thereafter, No Mercy was removed from sale in Australia, in the UK, and in Canada, and then the developer Xerac Games pulled the game entirely from Steam on April the 12th. They said, quote, "We don't want to cause any problems for Steam." Surely that's the end of the story, you might be thinking. Oh, dear listener, how wrong you are. Strap in. Following the success, Collective Shout turned their sights to other NSFW games on platforms like Steam and itch.io, where they said they had discovered hundreds of other games that contain rape, incest, and child sexual abuse, to quote them. So they launched a new campaign in May to email payment providers to demand that they stop processing payment for these kinds of games. They say that they'd been emailing Steam a lot and Steam had been ignoring them the whole time, so they were forced to escalate and go to the payment providers. And more than 1,000 emails were sent to various payment providers as part of this campaign. In July, they wrote an open letter to the CEOs of PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, PaySafe Limited, Discover, and the Japan Credit Bureau, asking them to, quote, cease processing payments on gaming platforms which host rape, incest, and child sexual abuse-themed games, end quote. Later that month, Steam and itch.io both removed thousands of NSFW games from their platforms, mainly ones that included explicit content. At the same time, Steam introduced a new rule, Clause 15, forbidding, quote, content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks or internet network providers, end quote. They said that they were, quote again, retiring those games from being sold on the Steam store because of loss of payment methods which would prevent customers from being able to purchase other titles and game content on Steam. So, end quote. So it sounds like Steam have taken a sort of almost editorial decision in a sense on the basis of what the payment providers might do. So basically it sounds like Collective Shout got their wish. It sounds like the campaign was effective. At the same time, itch.io, they de-indexed reportedly 20,000 games. To de-index the game means that if you already bought it, you can still play it. And if you've saved it in your collection or in your library or in your profile page, you can still see it, but you can't find it anymore. You can't search for it. It doesn't appear in recommendations. You can't get to the game by browsing to it through normal means. If you've already got it, you've got it. Otherwise, you can't play it anymore. itch.io explained this decision by saying that they had, quote, come under scrutiny from our payment processors, end quote. And they specifically said it was due to Collective Shout launching a campaign against them. itch.io said that they would take immediate steps towards compliance by conducting a review of the NSFW games and introducing new measures. And then in July, they gave an update saying that PayPal and Stripe were two specific platforms that they were awaiting further clarification from. and they need clarification around what kind of content they're not going to be able to host anymore. And they've introduced a new list of things that you can't include in your game, which includes basically anything that you would expect. You can't put non-consensual content in your game. You can't put barely legal style content in your games, or anything of that nature, really. And then the most recent update from this part of it is in early August, they have re-indexed the free games, the free adult NSFW games. So, because obviously they're not causing a problem with Stripe or PayPal or whoever. And they also passed a message along from Stripe, which seems a bit unusual, but Stripe have said, quote, Stripe is currently unable to support sexually explicit content due to restrictions placed on them by their banking partners, despite card networks generally supporting adult content with the appropriate registrations. Stripe has indicated that they hope to be able to support adult content in future, end quote. And as a result, Itch.io are looking for new payment partners. So, to summarize, and there's more after this, but to summarize, Collective Shout has led a campaign encouraging payment providers not to process payments for games including rape, incest, etc. But as a result of that, a much wider pool, tens of thousands of NSFW games that don't meet this criteria, that aren't rape or incest, they're just sort of regular, maybe pornographic, but just adult content in general, anything that can be classified as NSFW, tens of thousands of those have been removed from Steam and Itch.io collectively. All of this has predictably led to quite a large backlash from other sections of the gaming community. A lot of them are championing this as a freedom of speech issue for understandable reasons. They're saying it effectively amounts to censorship. The payment providers are sort of enforcing their line on the gaming platforms. It makes sense. I can understand that position. But also other people are pushing it, objecting to it as an LGBT issue. Eurogamer notes, for example, that LGBT content is much more likely to be treated as though it were NSFW. So this ends up having a censoring impact on games with any LGBT themes. GamesIndustry.biz quotes Robert Yang, who's a gay game developer, as saying, LGBTQ devs and fans are losing the platforms and communities we helped build. It's going to mean less LGBTQ representation in games and fewer LGBTQ people working in games. I am concerned the conservative culture warriors behind these crackdowns won't stop until they erase LGBTQ people completely from games, the internet, and all public life. And that's a sentiment that is mirrored in lots of forum posts, and I've seen lots of people discuss this as a potential slippery slope and a way of sort of by the back door getting rid of a lot of LGBTQ content. And again, just to remind you, this Collective Shout group, like whenever we think of No Mercy, the Collective Shout group was founded by someone who is uncritically, a self-admitted conservative Christian who's been campaigning against porn stuff all their life and is anti-trans. So I think there is a legitimate concern that that's part of what's motivated it. And so do apparently over 250,000 other people who have signed a petition on change.org aimed at MasterCard and Visa, demanding, quote, an end to this censorship of fiction and the right to choose the stories we enjoy without moral policing. Let creators create, they say. And there's also been a campaign of calling the payment providers to demand an end to the censorship of letter writing. Although, again, to complicate things a little bit here, one of our least favorite people, Elon Musk, has retweeted this petition, I believe, in support of the petition. So that's not
a downer.
Not great.
That's a downer.
It's a bit of a downer. Less of a downer, there's also been inputs from some unions with regards to this. The United Video Games Worker, part of the CWA, have retweeted some of the resources around this, and it basically in support of that petition. And they've put out a post, for example, saying sexual art is art, sex work is work, and encouraging their members to participate in the campaign against censorship as they view it. The International Games Developer Association has also said that they are seriously alarmed, and they have also highlighted that the action largely impacted legal, consensual, ethical content and risked having a silencing effect on LGBT creators. So we've seen No Mercy, we've seen the pressure group, we've seen the response from the payment providers, and then we've seen backlash to that. And the final bit here is we're going to see the responses to the backlash. Yeah, that's what happens in this kind of story.
The backlash.
The backlash to the backlash.
Can't wait.
So as I say, 250,000 people signed this petition. It's gotten quite big. Collective Shout have come out and said that the actions taken by Steam and Itch.io exceeded their demands. They've said that they were just asking for rape and incest games to be removed. So it's not their fault that the platforms took the step of removing all NSFW games. I mean, some might say that feels a little deceptive. Again, they are founded by someone who's been campaigning against porn their entire life. So for them to come out and say, well, we didn't mean to ban that porn, it's a little hard to take seriously that they're all that cut up about porn being removed from these platforms. And it feels a little bit like them trying to dodge criticism that they're getting online. That said, I mean, the person that we spoke about, the conservative Christian lady who founded Collective Shout, has come out and said that she's received, I think, hundreds of death threats and rape threats and all that kind of stuff. So don't fucking do that. Don't do that. I mean, she sounds like a fucking dick, but Jesus Christ, don't fucking do that. What the fuck? Also, some of the payment providers have come forward and given a response on it. I mean, I mentioned Stripe's one already. They said it's not them, it's their banking partners that are causing the problem. So they've sort of, they've passed the buck down a little bit as well. Itch.io passed it to Stripe, Stripe passed it to the banking partners. MasterCard have given a response. They've said, quote, MasterCard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. We allow all lawful purchases. And then they go on to say, at the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure MasterCards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content. So bear that in mind. Visa have responded as well. They have said, well, Visa have possibly responded. A lot of people emailed Visa as part of this campaign, and people have posted the responses they've got back. They've never commented on this like properly publicly. So we've only got people on Reddit's word for the fact that this is what their email said. Like there's screenshots of it, but the veracity of that is undetermined. But they've replied very much in line with MasterCard. Quote, Visa does not moderate content sold by merchants, nor do we have visibility into the specific goods or services sold when we process a transaction. When a legally operating merchant faces an elevated risk of illegal activity, we require enhanced safeguards for the bank supporting those merchants. Speaking of Visa, just on this as well, I don't want to go on too long about this story, but Visa have, I just think this is a relevant piece of context, Visa have been in court in the United States recently due to a lawsuit that sought to hold them accountable for sex trafficking because they provided financial services to Pornhub. This case was tentatively dismissed at the end of April, or it was tentatively said that Visa couldn't be held accountable for stuff that Pornhub did. But I wonder if that factors into it could factor into a wider thing of Visa being reluctant to get involved in any of this kind of stuff at all. And then the last response from these payment providers is PayPal gave a comment to The Guardian saying, PayPal is committed to maintaining a safe platform for its customers. We have a zero tolerance policy towards any illegal activity. Any accounts found to be associated with illegal activity will be closed. So the way I see it, there are sort of three elements at the heart of this story. First is the question about what should be done about games like No Mercy that feature rape, incest, etc. I'm sure you could have grown-up conversation where people took different positions in that. The second part of the story here is the fact of the removal of NSFW games more widely than even what appears to be what Collective Shout were publicly asking for. Like that in itself is the sort of second big component of the story, this widespread banning and what impacts that could have, especially on LGBT creators, etc. And then the third sort of heart of the story here is who bears responsibility for that widespread net. Obviously, it's action that platforms have taken, as in Itch.io and Steam. And, they've specifically said it's because Collective Shout pressured payment processors. So they're saying it's not their fault, it's Collective Shout and it's the payment processors. But Collective Shout have said, well, this isn't what we asked for. And the payment processors have all issued those statements I just read out, sort of kind of saying, well, it's not really us. But, I mean, I'm suspicious of Collective Shout for the reasons I've outlined, but I think those responses are not from the payment providers are not exactly conclusive. They've kind of denied that they have directly intervened and done sort of like direct censorship. But like it's very easy to imagine, for example, just speculating here, a situation where they, in response to this, re-emphasize their terms of service in a way that lawyers at Steam or Itch.io found to be sort of threatening. Meaning that that the payment providers could then claim that they haven't blocked any purchases, but they have also possibly taken actions that led to the platforms taking the actions that they took, if that makes sense. I mean, you can see that in Visa's statement, for example. They basically are saying, we don't censor anything, but then they're also saying there may need to be enhanced safeguards. Or from MasterCard, they're saying that they don't censor anything, but they reinforce the need for, quote, appropriate controls. So it's very easy to imagine that Steam's lawyers, for example, could read that as saying, you better make it very clear you aren't breaking any laws and that you have appropriate controls unless you want your service to be disrupted by enhanced safeguards. Like, that's sort of what it feels like is a plausible situation. That's my speculation. I've got no evidence of that. That's sort of what I feel like is possibly going on here. And that's where we're at now, that we're all caught up. There's not been much movement in this story as far as I can see in the past, since the start of August, really. But that's where we're at. I'm not sure if you guys had, I know, Alex, you were aware of the story before. Is this something you'd heard of, Sofie?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it is, yeah.
It
is
cool.
complex.
Yeah, well, it is. There's a lot of people that we don't like both sides.
That's the thing. It's like
Musk, collective
it becomes complicated when, like, I don't know, it's like, this is it is actually kind of relevant, is that the Online Safety Act in the UK recently, I uploaded a TikTok about it, which went like semi-viral, got like 500k views. And I think the reason it went viral is because people across the aisle were agreeing with my sentiment, which was quite disturbing. So it's always like when something like that happens where you agree with someone, like even people on the far right, it's like, oh, do I have the right take here? You know?
Yeah.
But obviously we don't believe in censorship, obviously. Like, we don't believe in censorship on the left. That's something that the right believes that we believe in, but we don't.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit icky when stuff like this happens, because it's like, no, I don't believe in censorship, but not for the same reasons that you don't believe in censorship. We actually have quite different reasons, and maybe we should just prioritize the fact that we're on the same side for once. But at the same time, I feels icky to partner with someone where I'm like, I think our motives are different here.
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up the Online Safety Act, because Peter Kyle definitely linked it in his discussion on LBC. He heavily linked it into that, and he was partially framing it as in, on Steam, the age verification is you just sort of tell them how old you are, so anyone can play anything really. Although you do also have like to link a card to it, so there is something. And he was sort of framing the Online Safety Act as though it was going to be like the long-term solution to this kind of issue. So yes, this exact story has been used as a defense of the Online Safety Act by British politicians.
Yeah.
I do think there are like
good observation.
I do think there are like two kind of points worth making about this, which is, one, I think it's important to say that, like, while this No Mercy game does sound awful, I think it's important that games are able to talk about those, non-consensual sex, incest, these issues. These are real issues that exist in the world. And, video game is an art form, and art should engage with them. I mean, we played Mouthwashing. How many episodes again? That engages with it. And, we had maybe issues with how it did that and stuff. But, like, at minimum, I think we would all agree that that's something that should be able to be talked about. So I think certainly just having a blanket saying, oh, no game can deal with this. And I can't remember what any of them were, but I know there were like some games that were brought up that were like, oh, well, this is a game that deals with this. I remember people were actually talking about Mouthwash. This is a game that it deals with this. Is this going to get banned? And I think some of them did even get banned.
It really does come to a point of, like, then again, sort of trying to delineate what is pornography from everything else. And that's a really complicated discussion, which, like, people don't have an answer to, where it's like, oh, is it made for specifically, sexual gratification? There's no artistic value in it. It's like, okay, but what's artistic value? That's also really amorphous and abstract. What are we defining that as? It does become quite complicated. Like, something that I have, still to have a sophisticated take on, other than just saying, like, it's complicated.
Yeah. And I think that there's another issue, which is that, like, part of, like, the original sin of this is the fact that all of these game platforms, maybe you could, like, maybe give itch.io a bit of a pass because they're so much smaller and kind of indie. I'm not entirely sure of the background of itch.io, but I know that's where all the indies go, right? But it's certainly going to be a lot smaller than Steam or other ones, is that they've had an incredibly lax moderation on there. I mean, Sofie, I don't know, you recently got a Switch. Have you looked at the Switch store recently?
A little.
Have you looked at the new releases on there?
Yes, it's mostly porn. It's
I know
hentai.
it's incredible. There's just a colossal amount of hentai on there, and it's very
I was quite
noticeable.
shocked.
And especially from like family-friendly Nintendo. Even they are not putting any real effort into it. And I think at minimum, I mean, I don't even necessarily think that like porn. I don't think porn shouldn't be available on this. But on these platforms, but I think there should be a much better attempt to like make it so that like it's siloed off in some way so that you don't fucking 10-year-old gets a Switch too for their birthday. Turns up, oh, what are the new games on here? Oh, it's hentai RPG, like hentai ecchi. There's like a million of them.
Because like a lot of these games will even. A lot of these games will have like actual screenshots featuring nudity or sex scenes like in the sort of like cover page for the game. Like you can very easily be exposed to this shit. Yeah.
And ultimately it's because the more games they have on there, the more money they make. Even if these games, I mean, it's hard to imagine that these games, there are so many of those hentai games. They're obviously cheap. They cannot be massive money makers, but there's so many of them that they get like a trickle of money from each of them, and Nintendo and Steam, etc., gets a cut of that. So, well, you make more money if you just don't have no moderation, basically. And it costs money to do moderation because you can't do that. They can't get AI to do that yet. So they'd have to have a team that goes through every single game that's submitted and determine if it's porn or not. So that costs money, and they don't want to spend that money. And so that's just the way it ends up, And so obviously I think they kind of left the door open for something like this to happen because they just wanted to cheap out on that shit.
Not particularly invested in fixing it.
Yeah. Well, maybe they are now, but
until things, until like we actually have sort of better concrete solutions. As I said in my semi-viral TikTok, talk to your kids. Like if you do have kids, if you're out there and you have kids, talk to them. Like it's very, very possible to establish a relationship with your kids where you can talk to them about these topics and they develop a sense of how to protect themselves online themselves, and also being aware of like what content makes them uncomfortable and how to avoid that content in the future. Like, not that anyone's listening to this podcast for advice on this stuff, but like that is, until we come up with a solution that isn't authoritarian about how do we limit, kids being exposed to this, talk to your kids.
I would just slightly disagree with that and say that I think all of our listeners should be basing their parenting style on trying to recreate me personally. I'm the greatest person, and they should want their children to be just like me, and they should take the tips from the podcast to do that.
Why wouldn't you want a little Soph running around,
Exactly.
Not
I was
me,
referring to
but
myself, but you two are fine, all right? Sure.
Thanks, Alex.
Anytime.
Yep. So that's that story. I trust you can see why I felt like I had to go all the way through it to really get the sort of nuances.
I would say,
out.
and I will leave this in because you definitely deserve it. I asked you to do this story, and I did not think it would be anywhere near that much research work. So thank you very much, Ed, that you really went above and beyond.
Thank you.
Okay. It did take me a lot of hours.
So I'm sorry to dump that.
All right.
I thought it'd be like you'd basically just be able to find an article that summarized it. So
that's all right. It was an interesting one.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So next up with our final bit of news.
Substantially less research. Basically, the developers at Arcane Studios in France have called on their parent company Microsoft to stop supporting Israel during its ongoing war in Gaza.
Very French episode.
Very French episode.
The most French thing I've ever.
Studios
What's going on?
France, they have called.
And they love porn in France as well. So that's another connection.
No.
Christ.
Oh my God! I'm going to Paris
so if I interrupt
tomorrow.
You...
They're going to stop me from entering the country. They're going to find out. Yes.
When does it, not this episip won't go out until then.
Oh yes, you'll be there.
They just won't let you leave. They just won't let you leave.
Yeah, this won't.
So you'll be banged up in French prison.
If you're listening to this, listener, I'm still in France. I can't leave. Please help me.
Hashtag free Sofie.
Hashtag free Sofie. Yeah, so basically, developers at Arcane Studios in France have called on their parent company Microsoft to stop supporting Israel during its ongoing war in Gaza. As we spoke about in a previous episode, Microsoft has been added to the BDS list, the Boycott, Divest and Sanction movement. They've been set as a priority target, specifically Microsoft's gaming division and Game Pass amongst its boycott targets. basically because of Microsoft's developing of software that Israel use, or I guess allegedly Israel is using as part of its targeting and also monitoring of Gazan civilians. I say allegedly because Microsoft has launched their own internal investigation, I use that quotation marks, and found no credible evidence, but they do say that they don't know how people use their software. So,
Could be used for anything.
But yes, they could be used for anything. But also, no, not that, though. So yes, I'm going to read some of the letter, but it is quite long, so I can't read the entire thing. The open letter published via Game Developer is addressed to heads of ZeniMax, Microsoft Gaming, and the overall Microsoft group. I'll read a portion of the letter here, but I won't read the whole thing because it's quite long. Quote, "We think that Microsoft has no place being accomplice of a genocide, and as Microsoft employees, we don't want to be part of this sinister project for Gaza. Moreover, we think it's our responsibility as tech workers to raise the alarm and to ensure that our technologies are used to make the voices of the oppressed heard, not to facilitate their demise. In a more direct manner, we think this could very well affect our life directly by reducing the audience of our games, thus directly compromising the viability of Xbox games and, in the long run, our very own jobs." So Arcane is joining an existing petition from Microsoft employees called No Azure for Apartheid, which has laid out specific demands, including termination of all ongoing or future contracts with Israeli occupation forces, transparent disclosure of ties to the Israeli military, including an independent and public audit of its contracts and services, an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and free speech and safety for pro-Palestinian employees. So obviously, it's good. It's good to see people speaking out about it, and I think especially people in the gaming industry speaking out about it. But I guess it does feel a bit like, joining a chorus of voices that aren't really getting much airtime. As I said previously, Microsoft said they internally investigated it and found no credible evidence to suggest that they're actually involved in Israel's...
Case closed.
Yeah, Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. For its part, quote, this is quoting from a GameSpot article, "For its part, in a blog post in May, Microsoft claimed that it conducted both internal and external reviews and, quote, found no evidence to date that Microsoft's Azure and AI technologies have been used to target or harm people in the conflict in Gaza. At the same time, though, it acknowledged that it does not have visibility into how customers use its software," which I think is a hilarious way to say, no, they're not. They might be, but they're not. They're not that. Probably not. They might be, but, whatever. Yeah, so if you don't know, Arcane is the Microsoft studio behind games like Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop. They're currently working on Marvel's adaptation of Marvel's Vampire Hunter Blade.
No.
Yeah.
I will say that there is actually an update to this story, which is, I believe, today, although actually by the time difference, it may have been yesterday. No Azure for Apartheid have actually occupied the plaza in front of Microsoft in Seattle to establish a, quote, liberated zone encampment, renaming the plaza to the Martyred Palestinian Children's Plaza. Apparently,
it's like the early noughties all over again.
Apparently, that's Microsoft workers, former workers, Seattle community members, and pro-Palestine protesters. I can't really see how long that lasted. If they're still there, is this a long-term thing, or is this just something they did for the day? I'm not sure, but they are definitely doing stuff. Yeah, I only saw this a little earlier today, so I bookmark it.
It is lovely. It is. Obviously, I think it's very easy to get focused on the fact that there's so many people speaking out about it and nothing has changed. But I do also think, again, in the grand scheme of things, more people are publicly pro-Palestine than they have ever been in the course of history. And this has been going on for 70 years. So 70 plus years. So I think all of this is a positive indication, it's all pressure. And it is kind of heartwarming to see it in the gaming industry in particular, which has been a historically quite apolitical and sometimes quite conservative reactionary space, if not apolitical. So it is good to see.
Yeah. It's fairly heartwarming, and it's easy to remember. Even though Microsoft is under BDS, it can't tell these people to just quit their jobs. That's very incredibly difficult. So the fact that they, and I mean, it must be really difficult to work in those circumstances, and know that what your parent company's doing. So being able to stand up and at least make it clear that you don't stand for this and you don't support this. I think is really important for them. So yeah, all love to the employees. Arcane.
Solidarity.
Yeah. And with that, I think we're going to be done. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all you're going to get. As always, you can follow and all that us, right? Us, us lot. Me, in my case, it's on Twitter at Alex Dean, ALEXDUIN, and on Blue Sky at Alex Dean, ALEXDUIN.bsky.social. Sofie, where can people follow you and consume all your content like a big old bowl of soup?
If you like my thoughts and you want to have more of it, like a big old bowl of soup, I stream on Twitch 4 days a week, where I basically just talk a bunch. Twitch.tv/Sofreely, SOFREELY.
If we never get to it, and I'm sure we will eventually, but if we never get to it on the podcast, I'm sure you can find out Sofie's opinions on the Fallout TV show through her stream.
Oh, I have talked about them on stream before.
There you go.
You missed out, listener.
Well, find some
Subscribe
archives.
now.
Find some archives. Ed, what about you? How can people find you?
Well, you can find me on X at StillNotALemon, or you can find me on Blue Sky at NotALemon. So thank you very much for listening. It's been such a treat to have you along.
Treat.
My goodness.
We missed
such a
you.
delight. Thank you so much.
I think it goes without saying.
We
did miss you.
Listener, are our favourite listener. The rest of them are not as good as you, but you are our favourite. The rest of them, I mean, I could take them or leave them, but we want you to stick around.
That said, do share this with all your friends.
Well, we haven't. If they are, we haven't encountered them. It's possible they could be better than you. I'm going to admit to you the possibility that new people, your friends and family, who you will obviously recommend listen to our podcast.
We deserve at least the chance to know.
Exactly. You wouldn't deny us, would you?
How would you sleep at night knowing that you didn't share this?
We're all agreeing.
Anyway.
You have no choice but to share us on your social media and review us on Spotify and iTunes. You would
also free me from France.
I think you'd genuinely be a bad person if you didn't do that. Let's be honest.
We need to stop now before this escalates to a point of, I don't know, if you don't like us, then you're in favour of all the people we're against.
Well, that's also true. That's also true. But before we go on to that, I will say that I know another thing you love about this podcast is the amazing music, and that music is from Brilliant Drink. So everyone loves them. Everyone loves them. But with that, I think we really are going to be done. So, as always, I will bid you goodbye.
Bye.